Chapter 549. Pay more attention to your steps when you walk. Xiaoqing said in a low voice, there are many animals living in this environment. Their skin color will be similar to mud and rocks, so we'd better be careful. Everyone expressed that they understood, and they became even more cautious as they walked. Xiaoqing was now paying more attention to the mountain walls on both sides. Some small animals with spots often crawled on them. Plants and animals were like that. There was definitely something wrong. This question was answered after they walked for a while. This was because they discovered a miasma. The miasma was very interesting. It was clearly floating not far in front of them, but it did not spread. It was as if there was an invisible barrier that prevented it from floating over. Xiaoqing asked, "Is there anyone with firepower? Let's see if we can clear the miasma." The miasma was poisonous. If they went over rashly, they were likely to be poisoned or even killed. "I'm a fire power possessor." Jin Mingyu stood out. "Let me have a try." Xiaoqing nodded and stepped aside to let him have a try. Although Jin Mingyu was a very ordinary fire power possessor, he was able to become the leader of one of the top 4 mercenary groups in the capital, which was enough to prove his strength. He stretched out his hand and pointed forward. A fireball slowly took shape. The color of this fireball was a deep red. It looked very beautiful. After the fireball floated into the miasma, they could see smoke rising in spirals. Everyone covered their noses and didn't dare to breathe, because the burned miasma was also poisonous. Jin Mingyu was indeed one of the top mercenaries in the capital. He soon cleared all the miasma. Then, they were surprised to find that behind the miasma was a smelly hill. To be precise, it was a corpse. It could be seen that the corpse was a very powerful mutant animal when it was alive. It should be a particularly large gorilla. However, it was dead. After its death, the corpse even rotted, emitting gas that formed a miasma. It could be seen how powerful it was when it was alive. However, no matter how powerful it was when it was alive, it was just a corpse after death. Moreover, the corpse was occupied by black bugs and became their nest. Black bugs could be seen constantly crawling out from the corpse. They probably reproduced and lived in the corpses. With the help of the corpses, they formed a group. Xiaoqing couldn't help but gasp in amazement. She could tell that this corpse was most likely a mutated animal above level 7 when it was alive. Even she couldn't compare. "I finally know why I haven't seen these black bugs since the end of the world, but they appeared in Country M. If I'm not wrong, these bugs were originally very few in number and their strength was average, but they were lucky enough to find this corpse and use it as their nest. After this powerful mutant animal died, its crystal nucleus still existed. If I'm not wrong, it should be the strongest of these bugs that swallowed the crystal nucleus in the corpse and is still digesting it." Xiaoqing rubbed his chin and said, "We're still early. If we were any later and it digested the crystal core, it would very likely rise to the 7th rank or above. At that time, I definitely wouldn't be able to deal with it." When the others heard this, they suddenly sweated. Level 7. In the whole M country, the strongest paranormal was just level 5. How could anyone deal with a level 7 mutant animal? They were really lucky to meet Xiaoqing at the most appropriate time. Otherwise, it would really become an uncontrollable disaster. "Just burn it," Xiaoqing said coldly. The interior of the corpse had been completely eaten. It was estimated that all the bugs were black. It was better to burn it directly. Jin Mingyu nodded and went forward to set the corpse on fire. In a few seconds, a tide of black bugs crawled out from the corpse. Hua immediately opened its mouth excitedly, waiting for these little bugs to fall into the trap. The taste of these little bugs was much better than the ones they had caught on the coast before. Hua was very satisfied with her meal. A rather large insect crawled out of the corpse. It looked different from the rest and had a pair of wings. While other insects could only run, it could fly. This should be the leader of them, Xiaoqing said after careful observation. As long as the leader of them was killed, the insect disaster would be solved. At that time, the insects would have no leader, which would be easy to deal with. Xiaoqing looked carefully. Her abilities were useless against these little bugs. Jin Mingyu's fire could burn the corpse, But it could not burn these little bugs. They eat abilities. Try not to get too close. Xiaoqing commanded Da Hua to constantly eliminate the little bugs. This trip was all dependent on Da Hua. Da Hua was brave. After eating some little bugs, it was not satisfied. It stretched out its leaves and small vines wrapped around the largest black beetle. A bug and a flower began to fight. How did the bug and the flower fight? The bug at least had legs, but Da Hua only had petals and leaves. When the big bug attacked, Da Hua would twitch its leaves to fight back. Then, it would find a way to swallow the big bug. Superpowered people could not participate in the fight, because these little bugs ate abilities. If superpowered people participated in the fight, they would be a meal for these little bugs. This made them even more powerful. That was all. The large flower was very powerful. It fought against a group of insects without any fear. Its petals, leaves, and vines were all activated. Many insects were directly knocked unconscious by its leaves and then dragged over to be eaten. While the bugs were not paying attention, it directly swallowed the biggest one. After swallowing it, it closed the bud. Then, the bud kept trembling, as if the bug inside had been struggling. As the highest level bug, it would not be digested so easily. The petals of Da Hua bulged a little here and there, and the bulges were wriggling. The big flower was shaking and shaking on the spot, as if it wanted to quickly digest the bug in its stomach. Xiaoqing's mouth twitched. She did not know why she was so worried that Da Hua would fall apart. Sure enough, trouble came from the mouth. Chapter 550. After a while, the flower couldn't help but spit out the worm again. The worm was covered in corrosive liquid, but it was swallowed again in less than 2 seconds. Xiaoqing felt a chill run down her spine. It looked like someone had just finished vomiting and then swallowed the vomit. In fact, the flower looked like a fisherman who had caught a big fish. The fish would struggle, and if they pulled it up forcefully, the fishing rod would break or the line would break. They would constantly cast the line to let the fish swim until it was tired and relaxed. Then, they would catch it in one fell swoop. As for the flower, it was letting itself rest for a while before swallowing and digesting. This disgusting scene lasted for 15 minutes before the worm was finally digested. Once the mother worm was digested, the remaining worms were nothing to be afraid of. Without the mother worm, although they could still reproduce, they couldn't give birth to new child worms. The worms that were born from the child worms would be weaker than the original. They would be much weaker in all aspects and would no longer be invincible. After the flower swallowed the worm, it was about to break through. It was originally on the verge of breaking through, but because it was limited by Xiaoqing's level, it hadn't been able to break through. This time, Xiaoqing also felt the feeling of breaking through. Xiaoqing suppressed the urge to break through on the spot and said, "Let's leave this place first." What a joke. Breaking through here was courting death. The foreigners were in a state of confusion because they were prepared to never return. Before coming, they had even said goodbye to their families. After all, they were going deep into the worm's nest. None of them thought about returning alive. They just felt that if they could kill the source of the worm, their deaths would be worth it. Then, the worm disaster was resolved so easily. The few of them couldn't believe it. This was the worm disaster that had plagued the entire United States and almost forced the survivors of the United States to retreat. How could it be resolved so easily? However, now wasn't the time to be in a daze. They were elites selected from the United States. If they didn't realize this, it would be a joke. On the way back, Xiaoqing demonstrated to everyone what strength was. She got rid of the vines blocking the way. When they came here, they wanted to preserve their strength to deal with the final boss. However, they didn't expect the final boss to be taken care of in just a few bites. Naturally, when they returned, they didn't have to avoid this thing anymore. Moreover, Xiaoqing was quite interested in them. After the vines were cut open, the meat in the middle was red with a hint of purple. It was smooth to the touch, like the flesh of aloe vera. Only its skin was particularly hard. After removing the layer of bubbles on the outside, the purple-black skin was particularly flexible. Xiaoqing kept some of them. She could go back and make gloves for Jiu Panpan. She was a strength type. Every time she fought, she would be barehanded. Although she was very strong, her hands would still be injured. With the protection of a pair of gloves, it wouldn't reduce her flexibility. It could also protect her palms. The rest of the vines were cut into pieces and kept. When they returned, they could be fed to the flower. Almost all mutated plants had a special ability, especially the flower that gained energy by devouring other plants and animals. If it devoured the vines, it would have a chance to obtain the corrosive venom in the vines to strengthen its own venom. After packing everything up, they left and quickly found a safe place to set up camp. Chapter 551. Diehua was currently at the 6th rank. It was possible for it to break through to the 7th rank, but it would be extremely difficult. If Xiaoqing broke through to the 7th rank, Diehua would break through as well. More accurately speaking, all of the plants on Xiaoqing's body would break through as well. Xiaoqing couldn't hold on much longer. As soon as the tent was set up, she had a die stand guard. Then, she quickly went inside and prepared to break through. She first took out a few 5th rank crystal cores from her space. Although 5th rank crystal cores weren't very useful to her now, it was better than nothing. Then, she released her vines and had them take root in the red soil she had collected. The insect queen had swallowed the 7th rank gorilla's crystal core, and Diehua had swallowed the insect queen. In other words, Diehua's stomach contained a high-level crystal core. Once inside the tent, Diehua spat out the crystal core and held it up with a leaf as if it was a treasure. Then, it handed it to Xiaoqing. Then, it used the leaf to hold the flower's head as it waited for Xiaoqing to break through. A 7th rank crystal core and several 5th rank crystals. If she couldn't break through this time, she really didn't need to live anymore. Outside the tent, Dai also rested his chin on his hand and obediently waited for Xiaoqing to break through. Anyone who tried to get close to her would be glared away by him. He couldn't let anyone disturb Xiaoqing when the sky was about to turn dark, let alone Dai. Even the people outside were getting anxious. They only knew that Xiaoqing was about to break through, but they didn't know what rank she was going to break through to. However, when they saw that she still hadn't come out at this time, they couldn't help but feel anxious. When night fell, even Zhu Morchen and Qin Zishi couldn't stand it anymore. They came over a few times, but Dai wouldn't let them get close. They were so anxious that they stomped their feet. Finally, when the moon was high above the willow tree, the curtain of the tent was suddenly lifted. Xiaoqing walked out from inside. Originally, everyone was paying attention to the tent, but when Xiaoqing came out, no one noticed. It was not until Xiaoqing grabbed Dai that they realized that Xiaoqing was already standing outside the tent. "How is it?" Qin Zishi quickly jumped over. Xiaoqing nodded, indicating that she had successfully broken through. She was still a little shocked because after reaching level 7, she discovered some very strange changes. Her body was slowly regaining its vitality. Although this recovery was very slow and the effect was very poor, it was still there. She couldn't help but think that perhaps the apocalypse wasn't the end of mankind, nor was it the end of the world, but a new beginning. Before the apocalypse, Earth's ecology had been destroyed by humans. Countless species had gone extinct, and the environment was getting worse and worse. Just like the Ice Age many years ago, countless dinosaurs had died, and the dinosaurs that survived had evolved into other forms to better adapt to this world. The apocalypse was probably Earth's way of saving itself, but this world also gave mankind a chance. Mankind didn't go extinct, but instead evolved in two different ways. One was an ability user, and the other was a zombie. It didn't matter if they were superpowered people or zombies, their final form of evolution was the same. This didn't mean that the evolution of zombies was absolutely bad. Why did people feel that zombies were scary? It was because zombies ate humans, and to the world, humans were just one type of creature. There wasn't much difference between them and other animals. Therefore, what was bad for humans was just a balance for the world. That was all. If zombies and ability users evolved in the same direction, then zombies would no longer be the enemy of mankind. Think about it, would a zombie like Xiaoqing, who had her own consciousness and rationality, eat humans? Of course not. Of course, There were some crazy people that were an exception. Could it be that there were no cannibals among humans? There were, and cannibals were more terrible than cannibalistic zombies. They ate humans because they didn't have any rationality. They were all manipulated by the desire to become stronger and the needs of their bodies. They couldn't realize what kind of behavior it was to eat humans. But what about humans? They were rational, and they knew that they were eating their own kind. Some people did it to survive, but most of them were really crazy. Zombies had begun to evolve in a normal direction, with wisdom and rationality. Later, they would be like Xiaoqing, and even their bodies would slowly recover. In the end, they would be no different from normal humans. Xiaoqing believed that when she reached level 9, her body would be the same as when she was alive. She had waited for this day for too long. This time, she really saw hope. If it was really like what she thought, then her die would return to normal. It was just a matter of time. And little Bun. She was suddenly full of confidence in life. If there's nothing else, let's go back. Xiaoqing still missed her future follower. Of course, more importantly, after the insect disaster was solved, she was eager to go home. This time, she came here because of the insect disaster. She could also get a follower, so this trip was already perfect. Naturally, they didn't have anything else to do, so everyone packed up and went back happily. Only Qin Zishi came over and whispered, "Is it level 7? Xiaoqing nodded, and he immediately beamed. "I knew it must be level 7. That's great, you must be the first person to break through to level 7 in the world." Xiaoqing smiled and touched his head. "There's always someone better than you. Maybe there are many more masters who haven't appeared in front of people. I'll be laughed at if I say that. No, Sister Qing, you must have the most powerful superpower." Halfway through, he pursed his lips, because he just remembered that Xiaoqing was actually a zombie. But Xiaoqing really didn't look like a zombie. She was like a living person. No. She should be a living person. How could a zombie smile, talk, comfort people gently, and save people? So he always felt that some people were blind. They never used their eyes to distinguish right from wrong. Were zombies always bad? Were humans always good? There was no such thing as right or wrong. Thinking of this, he couldn't help but feel wronged. Xiaoqing looked at him and couldn't help but touch his head. His hair was very soft, but it was a little short. It felt good to the touch. Dai suddenly jumped out and took Xiaoqing's hand from Qin Zishi's head, then put it on his own head. He stared at Qin Zishi and said fiercely, "It's mine." Xiaoqing was amused by Dai's cute appearance. She leaned on Dai's shoulder and laughed until she bent over. Qin Zishi pointed at Dai and stammered, he can talk. He can be jealous." Chapter 552. On the way back, Qin Zishi was in a state of sluggishness. The zombies they encountered during the zombie siege were only human-like, and they used the ability to create hallucinations to sneak into the base. They couldn't speak, and they had no emotions, but Dai had reached the point where he could speak. If all zombies were like Dai, would there still be space for humans to live? Xiaoqing didn't know his worries, or else Xiaoqing would have enlightened him. Once zombies evolved to a certain level, it was very likely that they would recover everything they had when they were human, such as memory and wisdom. When zombies recovered their memories, they found that when they were zombies, not only did they eat humans, but some people also ate their families and loved ones. What would happen to them? Some people would collapse and be unable to accept such a reality, and some would probably be confused by power and make the best of it. But Xiaoqing believed that there were always more good people than evil people. Between humans and zombies, there was only a bridge of communication, a way to understand each other. One day, humans and zombies could live in peace. Probably. After returning to the Chinatown survivor base, several civilian staff communicated with country's top officials while discussing with Tang Yaozu about leaving. There were too many people leaving, and they needed to form a fleet, at least dozens of large ships, to transport everyone back. Tang Yaozu couldn't just leave as he wished. He had too many things to explain and too many things to arrange, so that after he left, the Chinatown survivor base wouldn't immediately fall into chaos. Tang Tianda still came to report every day, probably to gain favor. After all, he would be Shao Qing's follower in the future. On this day, not long after Tang Tianda left, Shao Qing suddenly noticed that the vines she asked Tang Tianda to place on Tang Yaozu's body were activated. Shao Qing's eyes were cold, and she immediately said to Dai, immediately catch up with Tang Tianda, bring him back, and protect him. I will be back soon. Dai reluctantly agreed. Shao Qing activated the teleportation. Tang Yaozu went out this time to check on the ships that had been prepared. He tallied up the names of the people who would be leaving. Then, he went to check on the ships that had been built, to see if there were enough ships for everyone to ride, and how the quality was. After checking, he found that the number of ships was almost enough. At the latest, they would be able to set off tomorrow and return to his dream home. As a result, he was ambushed on the way back. This place was not far from the Chinatown survivor base. Tang Yaozu never thought that he would be ambushed in this place. This time, he didn't bring many people with him. There were only 2 guards and one in charge of the craftsmen who built the ship. Just as he walked to this place, someone suddenly came out from the ground and tried to assassinate him. He was caught off guard, and the people around him were caught off guard as well. At that moment, he really felt that his life was over. As a result, a vine shield suddenly appeared on his body, firmly protecting him in the middle. The assassin directly stabbed the shield and was bounced away. Tang Yaozu was stunned for a moment, and suddenly remembered that his son gave him something a few days ago. It was a vine with a pleasant color. He said that it was an amulet, but he didn't carry it with him. Although he felt that this thing was not reliable, it was his son's kindness, so he carried it with him. He didn't expect that it was this thing that saved his life. Chapter 553. However, it only saved him once before the vines disappeared. Then, the people hiding in the dark came out. He only had 2 guards, and one of them didn't have any special abilities. They couldn't stop them at all. Big brother, run! The 2 guards roared and went to meet them. Tang Yaozu was already desperate because he knew that these people were prepared and wouldn't let him go so easily. Sure enough, a few paranormals came out from the crowd, just enough to restrain his bodyguards. Sure enough, they had planned this well. They even knew the attributes of his bodyguards. He didn't believe that it wasn't a trap set by his acquaintances. Tang Yaozu closed his eyes and felt a little desperate. He just didn't want to believe it, but he knew who would do it to him. He wasn't worried about himself, but his son. If he died, those people would definitely not let his son go. Just when he was ready to fight to the death, a woman suddenly appeared beside him, a woman who looked very outstanding. He thought about it and remembered that his son had been looking for this girl recently. He also advised his son not to play anymore. If he really liked the girl, he should pursue her seriously. If he didn't really like her, he shouldn't disturb the girl. Before Tang Yaozu could say anything, Shao Qing made her move. She raised her hand and the aura of a level 7 paranormal was fully released. Guang Guang took the lead to come out and protect Tang Yaozu, followed by the vines and Da Hua. The vines were responsible for killing, and Da Hua was responsible for cleaning up the battlefield. After a minute, there were only 4 people left in front of Tang Yaozu. 3 of them were his people, and the last one was Shao Qing. Tang Yaozu didn't know if he was shocked or confused, but he blurted out, "Daughter-in-law." Shao Qing was speechless. The boss of the Chinatown survivor base turned out to be a retard. After that, Tang Yaozu coughed embarrassedly and said, "Miss, thank you for saving me." "You're welcome, it's just a deal." Shao Qing said calmly, "Go back, I will protect you and deal with everything." Tang Yaozu had a complicated look in his eyes. After a while, he sighed, "It's hard to fathom a person's heart." As he walked back, he said, "I didn't force anyone to go back to the Celestial Empire with me. I even left the base for them." "Why?" Shao Qing sneered and wanted to mock Tang Yaozu's naivety. She said, "You took away nearly half of the main force of the Chinatown survivor base. After you leave, will the Chinatown survivor base still be one of the 3 major survivor bases in Country M? If you and Tang Tianda are both dead, and there is no leader, they can then frame the Chinese government. First, they can keep everyone. The Chinatown Survival Base is one of the 3 major survival bases in the M Nation. Second, he can successfully become the leader of the Chinatown Survival Base. Such a big temptation, even a brother can't refuse, right? Xiao Qing said lazily, "You're the chief of the Chinatown Survivor Base. You're already so old. You don't lack life experience or wisdom. How can you be so naive?" Tang Yaozu smiled bitterly. He knew, but he didn't want to believe it. He was a loyal person, which was why so many people were willing to abandon everything and follow him back to the Celestial Empire. When Tang Yaozu returned, the deputy chief greeted him with a forthright face. "Big brother, why are you back so late? Isn't there a farewell party tonight? Everyone is waiting." Tang Yaozu's eyes were very complicated. "Ah Cheng, what do I owe you?" As soon as he said this, the deputy chief's face changed. He waited for a long time, and when the people he sent didn't return, he knew something had happened. Then he received the news that Tang Yaozu was back. At that moment, his hands and feet were weak, and he almost collapsed to the ground. Because he knew that if Tang Yaozu didn't die, he would be finished. Tang Yaozu was definitely not stupid. As long as he guessed, he knew who did it. Whether it was a peel or other things, he was far inferior to Tang Yaozu. If Tang Yaozu didn't die, all his plans would be ruined. After despair, he began to think about how to save it. He knew that Tang Yaozu was a very loyal person. His only chance was to pretend that nothing had happened. Maybe Tang Yaozu would let it go for the sake of their many years of friendship. But Tang Yaozu didn't. He exposed everything and made it clear that he wanted to settle accounts with him. He became more and more desperate, and his eyes were a little red. Tang Yaozu continued. "I saved you from the zombie crowd. In order to save you, I was seriously injured. Every time I went out on a mission, I would give you a little more crystal nucleus. Later, when we built the base, I let you be the second in command. Everything you have is given by me." "Why?" The deputy chief couldn't help but roar. "Since you have given me so much, why don't you give me a little more? You are old, and your son is a waste. Why don't you give the base to me and live a peaceful life? Why do you have to go back to the Celestial Empire? We already have such a big foundation. Why do you want to destroy everything?" "But I left the base to you," Tang Yaozu said angrily. His face was ferocious. "As you said, you let me be the second in command. I also had a part in the construction of this base. Do you want me to watch this base turn from one of the 3 major survivor bases of Country M into a worthless small base and then be swallowed up by others? So you want to kill me?" Tang Yaozu felt very tired. He had long known that interests could corrupt people's hearts, but he didn't expect the deputy chief to go to this extent. Regardless of their many years of brotherhood, regardless of how many times he had saved him, the deputy chief wanted to kill him and his son. How ruthless did he have to be to do such a thing? He closed his eyes and let out a long breath. He heard the deputy chief say, "Are you going to kill me now?" Xiao Qing looked coldly at the deputy chief. He was angry on the surface, but he was secretly playing the emotional card. He was not ready to expose it. If Tang Yaozu couldn't even make such a decision, then he was really the chief of the Chinatown Survivor Base for so many years in vain. It was a good thing to value relationships. If he valued relationships to the point of stupidity, then even if he died, it would not be a pity. Xiao Qing understood that there was not even a trace of regret in the deputy chief's eyes. There was only regret. Why didn't he send more people to kill Tang Yaozu outside? Tang Yaozu sighed again and said, "I thought you and I had a deep friendship, so I didn't want to kill you." Before the deputy chief's eyes showed joy, Tang Yaozu said, "But you are not my only brother. I always have to consider other brothers, so if you want to hate me, then hate me. Kill." Chapter 554. The deputy base chief couldn't believe that Tang Yaozu was really going to kill him. He was stunned. Then, a trace of ruthlessness flashed across his face. He said to the people around him, "If I die, will you have a good ending? Come with me." Then, before he could finish his words, a group of people were lifted up by the vines. They were really lifted up, They were all hung upside down in the air. Those who wanted to struggle were beaten black and blue by the barbed whip. Xiaoqing was very experienced in beating people. She could make it very painful without hurting the muscles and bones. This was all because of Yang Qiue. The group of people were beaten like dead dogs. When they became obedient, Xiaoqing looked at Tang Yaozu. Tang Yaozu's face was full of pain. He gritted his teeth and said, "Kill them." Xiaoqing knew the pain in his heart. She didn't want to force him to do anything. She just killed them all. Everyone had their necks broken, but it wasn't painful at all. It was refreshing enough. She directly threw the corpses to Da Hua to destroy them. After that, Xiaoqing said, "I don't need to do the rest. I'll go first." Then, without waiting for Tang Yaozu to speak, she directly located Tang Tiande and went back. Tang Tiande was with a Dai, surrounded by corpses. It seemed that the deputy base chief really didn't want Tang Tiande to leave alive. Unfortunately, a Dai was there, so the deputy base chief's idea could only be destroyed. It could only be said that he was unlucky to have met Xiaoqing. So, it was natural that he failed. After Xiaoqing went back, Tang Tiande hurriedly asked, "How is my father?" "Your father is fine. The matter has been solved. You can go back." Xiaoqing waved her hand and said, "Don't forget our deal." Tang Tiande joyfully expressed his thanks, and then went back happily. The day of return was delayed by 1 day because Tang Yaozu had to clean up the mess left by the deputy base chief. On the 3rd day, they officially set sail. The scene was very grand. 20,000 ordinary people and ability users were returning to the Celestial Empire in 3 batches. The first batch consisted of 50 ships, forming a vast fleet. After nearly half a month of sailing, they finally returned to the Celestial Empire. These people who returned to the Celestial Empire all stayed on the shore. After the higher-ups of the Celestial Empire discussed it, they would consider which piece of land to give them. Xiaoqing didn't care about these. Xiaoqing picked up Tang Tiande and couldn't wait to return to Jiang City. Firstly, she missed the big and little babies at home. Secondly, she wanted Tang Tiande to plant the things she wanted in Jiang City as soon as possible. Just thinking about it made him feel great. After returning to Rivertown, Tang Tiande immediately knelt down. His legs were so weak that he couldn't even stand up. With a look of despair, he went up and hugged Xiaoqing's thigh. "Boss, I really know my mistake. I was wrong the last time. Please forgive me. I don't taste good." Xiaoqing frowned helplessly. "Get up. What are you doing? Did I say I was going to kill you?" Dai also angrily pulled him away and didn't let him hug Xiaoqing's thigh. Tang Tiande burst into tears. "Just treat me as a fart. Don't hide it from me. Look at the zombies in the city. You helped me bring them here. What else can you do?" Xiaoqing said coldly, "This is my home. The zombies you saw are all my subordinates. They are very friendly. If you don't believe me, I can call one over and let you see." Then, Xiaoqing called a zombie over. This zombie's level wasn't high. Just by looking at its appearance, one could tell. After all, there weren't many zombies with rotten faces these days. Chapter 555. Although this zombie's level was low, it was ugly. When Tang Tiande saw its appearance, tears flowed down his cheeks. Xiaoqing asked the zombie to come closer. It opened its bloody mouth in front of Tang Tiande. When it exhaled, a foul smell hit his face. Tang Tiande rolled and crawled back a few steps. He said with a pitiful face, "Boss, ask it to stay away from me. I'll do anything you want me to do." Xiaoqing waved her hand to let the zombie go. Then she said, "I didn't lie to you. This is Jiang City, a zombie base built by my friend. But the zombies here don't bite. You don't have to be afraid. Just stay here. After you finish what I want you to do, I'll let you go." Tang Tiande looked like a little girl who had been molested. He followed Xiaoqing shyly and timidly. He didn't dare to leave. He was afraid that the moment he left, he would be eaten by the zombies as a meal. Xiaoqing took Tang Tiande back to her residence. Yang Hanqing wasn't at home, which made her feel relieved. However, Little Bun and the others weren't there either. After settling Tang Tienda down, Xiaoqing went back to her room. When she was outside the door, she faintly heard rapid breathing and moaning in the room. Xiaoqing was stunned for a moment. Then she didn't know whether to laugh or cry. It was most likely that Yang Qiyu had stirred. When she opened the door, she saw Yang Qiyu holding her panties and doing avocania things. Xiaoqing covered her face and was speechless. After a while, she walked over and grabbed Yang Qiu's hand. Then she said, "Do you need my help?" Yang Qiu was surprised and wronged, but she wasn't shy. She hummed and leaned into Xiaoqing's arms. Dai also came over. About an hour later, Xiaoqing lazily hugged the girls and asked, "Where are Jiyu Panpan and the rest?" Yang Qiu also had a lazy look on her face. "Yes, I went out. Today, I will look after the house." Not long after you left, a base announced that they have created a drug that can prevent ordinary people from being infected by zombie poison. As long as they are vaccinated before they go out, they will not be infected if they are injured within an hour. Although there are many restrictions, everyone still wants to get it. After all, everyone cherishes their lives. No one wants to become a zombie. Then, that base took the opportunity to raise the price of this medicine. They bought it at an extremely high price and made a lot of money. I was curious, so I asked Yang Hanqing to bring me one. "Look at what I found." Yang Qiu sneered. Xiaoqing nodded and said, "What is it?" The ingredients of the potion are crystal core powder and blood of wood-type paranormals. That is to say, they may have imprisoned some wood-type paranormals and killed some of them, because the amount of potions they sold is not a small amount. Yang Qiu chuckled and continued, "Then, not long ago, a base chief's daughter went missing. She's a wood elemental paranormal, and the medicine he bought back contained his daughter's energy fluctuations, and then?" Xiaoqing was very supportive. Yang Qiu clutched her stomach and burst into laughter. In the end, he found out that his daughter had died and turned into a pile of medicine. The base chief was furious and contacted many bases to attack that base. He also said that after conquering that base, he would be able to obtain their method of producing medicine and divide it equally among everyone. Now, the whole country is in chaos. Yang Hanqing and the rest just went to watch the show. Yang Qiu nestled in Xiaoqing's arms and said, "Isn't it funny?" "Yes." Xiaoqing touched Yang Qiu's head and said, "I brought back a little brother who is very good at farming. I plan to take him to plant blood-sucking vines and poison vines all around Jiangcheng City. Then, we will open up a piece of land to plant food. That way, there will be no internal and external troubles, and everyone can live a stable life." Chapter 556. Tang Tienda was shivering in his room. He looked out of the window and then at the door, as if he was worried that zombies would sneak in and attack him. He looked very pitiful. Xiaoqing held one in each hand. When they entered the door, Tang Tienda looked as if he saw his savior and rushed over. He had wanted to hug Yang Qiu's thigh, but Yang Qiu had calmly stepped on his face to prevent him from rushing over. Tang Tienda saved his face from Yang Qiu's foot and said pitifully, "Brother, sister-in-law, can I sleep on the floor in your room?" It was too scary to be alone. He wanted to hide under the bed when he was in the room, let alone sleep. Work first, then talk about other things. Xiaoqing kicked him mercilessly and said, "If you perform well, I'll set up vine guards at the door and windows of your room. If you don't perform well, I'll throw you out and let you live with the zombies." Tang Tienda jumped up without saying anything. "Boss, do you have any instructions?" "Just tell me." Xiaoqing led him out with satisfaction and took him to patrol Jiang City. Yinyi was doing an experiment. When he heard that Xiaoqing was back, he came out of the lab. When he saw Xiaoqing and the timid Tang Tienda, he couldn't help but tease her. "You brought back another one to warm the bed. Bring him back if you like. We can afford to live in Jiang City anyway." Tang Tienda was scared by Yang Qiu and Dai's cold stares. He wanted to kneel on the ground, hug Yin Yi's leg and shout, "Brother, you are my brother. Don't mess with me," but he only dared to clarify in a low voice, "Boss just took me in as a follower. Do you want to go together?" Xiaoqing said, "Let's discuss where to plant these things." "Okay." Yin Yi threw the gloves and followed them outside. There was a lot of labor in Jiang City. Those zombies didn't know how to be tired. They worked day and night. Therefore, after Yin Yi and Xiaoqing settled down here, they led the zombies in the city and built 2 walls around the periphery of Jiang City, one inner wall and one outer wall. Xiaoqing took out the seeds in her hand and said, "The poison vines are too lethal. It's too dangerous to plant them between the outer and inner walls. It's better to plant them outside the outer walls. The same goes for the blood-sucking vines. The devil's vines should be planted between the 2 walls. Yin Yi, what do you think?" Poison ivy was the one she had found near the insect nest. It was a purplish-black, extremely huge, and had poisonous bubbles attached to it. It was the kind of vine. As for the blood-sucking vines, they had been planted outside before. Any plant or animal that came close would be entangled by the blood-sucking vines and have their blood sucked dry. It was also a very dangerous plant. The devil's vines liked to disguise themselves. When they were stuck to the wall, they were like the most ordinary plants like Boston ivy. However, once they were touched or approached by someone, their leaves would instantly open up, revealing flowers with the face of a devil. The flowers would emit an existence similar to ultrasonic waves. When the person was temporarily controlled by the sound waves, they would be pulled into the vines by the devil's vines and become fertilizer. These few plants, each more terrifying than the other. Any one of them would be an existence similar to the worries of ghosts. Tang Tianda's thighs were trembling again. "Daddy, save me." He thought that he was here to plant some fruits and vegetables. He didn't expect that what awaited him was actually this. After discussing with Yin Yi, they decided to plant 1 blood-sucking vines every 10 meters. There would be 5 blood-sucking vines of each type, and 1 poison ivy. The poison ivy didn't have any seeds, but Xiaoqing had cut it into pieces. It could be planted like potatoes. Xiaoqing silently urged Tang Tianda with her eyes. Tang Tianda swallowed a mouthful of saliva and began planting. He was planting the poison ivy. After Xiaoqing inserted a section of the vine into the soil, he activated his ability. Countless fluorescent green dots of light fell from his hands. A section of the poison ivy that was exposed from the ground seemed to be nourished by these tiny dots of light and began to slowly grow. Although it was said to be a slow growth, it was actually very fast compared to the growth period of a plant. At least, it could be seen with the naked eye. Section after section of the vine sprouted out, like bamboo shoots after the rain. Very quickly, the poison ivy grew to about the same size as the ones that Xiaoqing had seen before. As for Tang Tianda, his forehead was also covered in sweat. Xiaoqing had everyone move aside. Then, she released her own vines and used them to lightly touch the poison ivy. The poison ivy that had been standing there quietly suddenly twitched around as if it had gone crazy. After Xiaoqing retracted her vines, the poison ivy slowly burrowed into the ground after a long while. "Very good." Xiaoqing nodded in satisfaction. Then, she urged Tang Tianda to plant the blood-sucking vines. Tang Tianda was pitiful. He took the seeds and began to plant them around the city wall. His strength was not high to begin with. He was only a level 3 ability user. Very quickly, his ability was used up. Tang Tianda originally thought that once his ability was used up, Xiaoqing would temporarily let him go and let him recover or rest for a period of time. Unexpectedly, Xiaoqing calmly took out a large pile of crystal nuclei. "Come, quickly absorb them. Once you're done, continue." Tang Tianda, dead. Frequently overdrawing one's ability and then recovering it to full before overdrawing it again was actually a very effective method of cultivation. For example, Tang Tianda had planted the crystal nuclei around Rivertown's city wall. When he was about a third of the way up, he sat down to absorb the crystal nuclei and broke through just like that. He was still a little dazed because he had been at level 3 for a long time. His speed of absorbing the crystal nuclei was also very slow. He originally thought that it would take a long time before he could break through. He did not expect to break through so suddenly. What was the old saying again? With pressure comes motivation. "Boss, I think I broke through," Tang Tianda said with a dumbfounded expression. Xiaoqing smiled. Very good. The planting speed should be faster now, right? Tang Tianda died again at the age of 26. Chapter 557. Tang Tianda began his long and pitiful farming career. During the day, he would plant vines and other things. At night, after dinner, he would plant vegetables and fruits. Xiaoqing opened up a plantation in Jiang City. The plantation was not small. It mainly planted rice and wheat. After planting, they could store it. Anyway, with Tang Tianda as her little brother and so many zombies as free labor, it would be a waste not to use them. There was no harm in storing more food. The other part was vegetables and fruits. There were all kinds of vegetables and fruits. In the future, they would be able to eat whatever they wanted. Xiaoqing was very satisfied with Tang Tianda as her little brother, especially after eating the fresh fruits produced by her family. From now on, she could wave her hand heroically. We can plant whatever we want to eat. At night, Yang Hanqing came back with other friends. He was holding a little bun in his arms. The little bun had fallen asleep. He was lying on Yang Hanqing's shoulder and drooling. He looked very funny. Give him to me. Xiaoqing walked forward and took the child. When she took the little bun, Yang Hanqing looked at her with a deep gaze. She felt a little numb. She really did not know how to face Yang Hanqing. So she avoided him. Sister Qing, you are back. Jiyu Panpan happily rushed forward and pulled Xiaoqing to the side. Her actions temporarily relieved Xiaoqing of the awkwardness. Xiaoqing chatted with them for a while and said, I left some food for you. Let's talk after eating. I won't go too far in a short time. We have plenty of time to talk. Then they went to eat. Xiaoqing carried the little bun upstairs and let him sleep on the bed. After settling the little bun down, she saw Yang Hanqing coming in. You said you would give me an answer. Xiaoqing's scalp continued to tingle. She laughed dryly and said, Did I say that? Yang Hanqing lowered his eyebrows and said lightly, I know I'm not as good looking as the two of them, and I'm not good with words. I don't know how to please girls, but I know that you actually like me. So why won't you accept me? Are you afraid that Dai and Yang Chiue won't accept it? He paused for a moment and then said, Or do you think that I'm not worthy of being with you? Or are you prepared to give up on me because you want to keep your promise to them? No. Xiaoqing suddenly raised her head, only to find that Yang Hanqing's eyes were a little wet. His voice was gentle but stubborn. After you left, I thought about it a lot. I thought about the time we first met. I thought about every gentle glance you gave me. I also thought about whether or not I should be thick-skinned and ask you after you came back. I thought about it a lot. In the end, I realized that I'm not a magnanimous person. I can't just stand by and watch you be with someone else. I'm very close to you, but I'm very far from your world. So, can you give me a quick death? As long as you reject me, I will leave immediately without any hope. Yang Hanqing grabbed Xiaoqing's hand and said softly, I will never, ever, ever come back to disturb you again. Her heart felt terrible, like it was going to explode. While it was swelling, it was also sour. Xiaoqing subconsciously grabbed Yang Hanqing's hand and said in a hoarse voice, You're forcing me. How can I bear to force you? Yang Hanqing laughed self-deprecatingly and said, I originally thought that I could be like those novels and TV shows. As long as I see you happy, that's enough. Later, I realized that I can't. I'm afraid that if I can't have you, my heart will be twisted and I'll do something to hurt you. Ah Qing, firmly reject me. Let me give up and leave. Chapter 558. Bastard. Xiaoqing's fingertips were trembling. She admitted that she was a greedy woman. She already had Yang Hanqing and Dai, but she still couldn't bear to let go of Yang Hanqing. Previously, she had been avoiding him and only wanted to reject him. However, when Yang Hanqing was about to leave, Xiaoqing finally realized what she was thinking. She did like Yang Hanqing. Otherwise, she wouldn't have found an excuse to help Yang Hanqing. She just couldn't bring herself to accept Yang Hanqing. She had already told Yang Chiue that she wouldn't bring a third man back, but she turned her head and accepted Yang Hanqing. However, when it really came to this, she realized that face was nothing. Pushing away a man who loved her for face was really a stupid thing to do. "How much do you love me?" Xiaoqing asked very calmly. Yang Hanqing whispered, "More than my own life. I admit that I do like you, but love can't decide everything in life. Are you sure you can accept 4 people living together?" Xiaoqing said very seriously. "Don't brush me off on this question because it's really important. It would be a lie to say that I'm willing to share you with other men. However, I'm really willing because I know that they love you no less than I love you. I also know that you love them more than you love me. You won't give them up, so I'll learn to get used to it." Yang Hanqing's eyes flashed with joy. He took a step forward and hugged Xiaoqing. Then, he said gently, "At least let me try, okay?" "Okay." Xiaoqing said faintly, "I won't force you to stay. If one day you feel tired or can't stand this kind of life, you can tell me directly or leave directly. I'm not the kind of person who's unreasonable." "That day won't come." Yang Hanqing's voice was filled with joy. "I'm very happy today. Really, I'm very happy." Xiaoqing could feel that Yang Hanqing's chest was vibrating as he spoke. He was filled with joy and gentleness from the bottom of his heart. She didn't know if her decision was right or wrong, but at least at this moment, both she and Yang Hanqing were happy. "Move in tonight." Xiaoqing was a little embarrassed. "The bed in my room is big enough for 4 or 5 people." She suddenly felt that her words were ambiguous and immediately felt uncomfortable. Yang Hanqing, on the other hand, was very happy. "I'll bring my quilt over." After Yang Hanqing left, Xiaoqing patted her cheeks. Then, she was a little worried. How should she tell the two at home? During the day, she had just said that she would never bring a man back. At night, she brought a man back. Wasn't this a slap to her face? On the other side, Yang Hanqing had just walked to the end of the corridor when he saw Yang Qiyu leaning against the wall. Yang Qiyu said lazily, "Did you get what you wanted?" "Thank you." Yang Hanqing was expressionless, but his gaze was much gentler. He was clumsy and would never say those words before. It was Yang Qiyu who taught him. Otherwise, with his character, he would definitely be bored until the end. "You don't have to thank me. I just don't want our Qing to regret it in the future. Everyone has a cinnabar mole and a white moonlight in their hearts. What they get will turn into mosquito blood and rice grains. I don't want you to become the white moonlight in our Qing's heart." Yang Qiyu tilted his head and suddenly smiled. "No matter what, you're the last one to enter the family. Come, call me second brother." Then, Yang Hanqing silently ignored Yang Qiyu and went downstairs. Yang Qiyu was left punching the wall and laughing. As he laughed, he bit his fingertip and fiercely tore it with his teeth. Chapter 559. His skin was torn, blood was flowing, and his flesh was badly mangled. In the end, he licked the blood from his fingertips expressionlessly. He had always been a vicious and selfish man. How could he do such a generous thing? Yang Qiyu felt that he had gone crazy. He wanted to kill those men who looked at Xiaoqing differently. But he had to help another man who had designs on Xiaoqing and make Xiaoqing accept him. In the past, he would never have imagined that there would be a day where he would care about a person's feelings. He would be happy and sad because of her emotional fluctuations. He could even tell that she liked that man, so he was magnanimous and went against his own wishes to set them up. He did this so that she would not regret it, not be sad, and not sigh because she missed out on something. He had really gone crazy. "You taught me," Xiaoqing said calmly and indifferently. Yang Qiyu turned around and hugged Xiaoqing tightly. "I regret it. I feel bad. Ah Qing, I feel bad." Xiaoqing allowed Yang Qiyu to hug her. There was a gentleness in her eyes that Yang Qiyu could not see. "Weren't you very smart before you were with me? Why have you become such a fool now?" Yang Qiyu did not speak. He just hugged Xiaoqing tightly. His heart was so sour that it was as if he had spilled a storehouse of vinegar. It was clearly his own choice, but in the end, he regretted it so much. "No refund. No refund." Xiaoqing sighed and then said, How can I not see that? Someone taught him. Yang Hanqing's temper is not good at forcing people. Only you can do such a thing. Now you know how to feel bad. If you know how to feel bad, then don't do it in the future. Yang Qiue responded inaudibly. He pressed Xiao Qing against the wall and kissed her. They kissed until they were almost out of breath. Yang Qiue also gradually calmed down. Qing, I'm a very extreme person. If you don't love me one day, you must kill me, because I don't know what I will do. There won't be such a day. Even if you leave, it will definitely be you who leaves me, and I won't give you the chance to leave. Xiao Qing said very calmly, if you want to leave, I'll break your legs and tie you to the bed. You'll only be able to see me every day and you won't be able to run away. These words were truly cruel, but Yang Qiue's breathing quickened. He even had a reaction. He leaned against the wall, and the corners of his eyes were flushed red like peach blossoms. He was gorgeous and sexy. Even his eyes were wet, with a hint of temptation. He said in a hoarse voice, if you're going to have a change of heart, tell me the day before. Either I eat you, or you eat me. From then on, you and I are one. You won't be able to shake me off. Don't seduce me. The baby is still sleeping. What if you wake him up? Xiao Qing's gaze deepened. She leaned against Yang Qiue's body and sighed. In this life, I have the three of you. It's enough. Chapter 560. Xiao Qing might not be used to having another person on the bed at first, but when she woke up in the middle of the night, she was stunned for a moment. Then, she looked to the left and then to the right. Little Bun was sleeping in her arms, Dai was sleeping on her left, Yang Qiue was sleeping on her right, and Yang Hanqing was sleeping on her right. Yang Hanqing was very big, but he was curled up in the corner. He looked a little pitiful and a little pitiful. Xiao Qing tiptoed up, went to the balcony, and smoked a cigarette. She was getting more and more used to smoking, but she rarely smoked indoors because second-hand smoke was too harmful to her family. Why did you suddenly wake up? Yang Qiue was wearing a pair of underpants and looked like he was going to the toilet. He yawned lazily and then walked to Xiao Qing's side. I woke up. I suddenly couldn't sleep, so I came out to stand for a while. Did I wake you up? Xiao Qing turned around and didn't know whether to laugh or cry. You should at least wear pajamas or something. It's cold now. Aren't you afraid of catching a cold? I won't be cold if you hug me, the shameless man said shamelessly. Then, Xiao Qing really hugged him. The two of them leaned against the balcony. Yang Qiue said softly, what's wrong? You look a little unhappy. I'm not unhappy. I just feel a little unbelievable. I'm not that outstanding a woman. You can even say that I'm ordinary. What have I done to make the three of you willing to give up everything to be by my side? Sometimes, I feel that it's unrealistic. As she spoke, Xiao Qing laughed. I don't think that I'm so beautiful that three outstanding men are willing to share me with others. They'd rather share me than be with me. If all men are like you and can't see their own good, then that's great. I won't have to worry that one day, someone will suddenly jump out and snatch you away from me. Or, when I wake up, you'll bring back another man. As he spoke, he sighed and then said, there are too few blind men these days. Xiao Qing was teased by him, and the messy emotions in her heart completely disappeared. She leaned against the railing and said lazily, I am already satisfied. With the three of you and Little Bun, no one dares to touch Jiang City. We even built a plantation in the city. It is like a paradise. But I feel like a storm is brewing. This peace makes one feel uneasy. Even if the sky falls, there are tall people to hold it up. What are you afraid of? Yang Qiue sighed and said, you are good in every way except for one thing. You think too much. How long is a person's life? 100 years is just a blink of an eye. Enjoying ourselves while we can is enough. Even if it's the end of the world, haven't we survived? If we really come to a dead end, we'll be together as a family. There's nothing to be afraid of. At worst, we'll die together. I was thinking too much. Xiao Qing chuckled and said, if there's nothing else, I won't go out for a while. I'll stay at home with you guys. I've realized that I've been running around all these days and haven't been able to accompany you guys for a while. Okay. Yang Qiue couldn't wait for Xiaoqing to not go out and stay at home with them. It didn't matter if those people outside were dead or alive. Go to sleep. Otherwise, you'll definitely be tired tomorrow. Xiaoqing touched Yang Qiue's belly and said, I want to fatten you up. At least you'll have some meat on your body. Unlike now, when it hurts to touch. If I fatten you up, you'll be the only one who wants me. Yang Qiue winked and was then pressed back into bed. The next morning, when Yang Hanqing got up, he was still not used to it. When he looked at Xiaoqing, his face was a little red. Chapter 561. Because Xiaoqing only wore a set of underwear to sleep. When he looked over, he couldn't help but look at certain places, but when he really saw them, he quickly moved his eyes away. Her bashful look was especially interesting. Xiaoqing stretched. While she was still in a daze, Yang Qiue brought clothes over. After the family got dressed, they went out to brush their teeth and wash their faces to prepare for breakfast. Xiaoqing was the first to finish washing up and went downstairs to cook. The porridge, plain porridge, and side dishes were the most suitable for breakfast. When the family sat down to eat, Yang Hanqing remembered what he had forgotten. I was really bored before, so I took Pan Pan and the others out. I just wanted to walk around, but I didn't expect to find a problem. Yang Hanqing frowned, then he said, someone was behind all of this. I even suspect that the base wasn't the one who made the potion. They were just used as a shield. But the base has already been destroyed. Even when we attacked the base, we still couldn't find a way to make the potion. Zhao Hai nodded, then he said, that's right. Let's put this matter aside for now. Don't worry about the outside world for now. I'll accompany you this month and don't care about anything. Xiaoqing picked up food for everyone and said, if you want to go out and play, I'll accompany you. Yang Hanqing didn't say anything. Naturally, he also hoped to spend more time with Xiaoqing. Xiaoqing really did what she said. These days, she had been with the family all the time. Usually, she would play with the little bun or go to the plantation to take a look and supervise her little brother. Occasionally, she would take the family to walk around and enjoy the scenery. In short, she was very relaxed. After a while, Tang Tianda's family received news that a new base had been built. The new base was called Hope Survivor Base. A new beginning, everyone's hope. Tang Tianda wanted to go back, so he came to Xiaoqing to ask for leave. He also hoped to invite Xiaoqing to go over and take a look. Xiaoqing wasn't an unreasonable person, so she naturally agreed. Jiyu Pan Pan and the others stayed at home and didn't plan to come out, so Xiaoqing took Little Bun and the other 3 men out. Tang Tianda was now in awe of Xiaoqing, even more so than his father. He led Xiaoqing away. The new base was built not far from the seaside. It was also far away from the disputes. The higher-ups in the base had all seen Xiaoqing and were quite friendly to Xiaoqing. After they arrived at the base, they stayed there temporarily. Hope Survivor Base was the only one that was bold enough to accept all the ordinary people and superpowered people who came to join them. Anyway, as long as they came, they would take them. After all, Hope Survivor Base was starting again, and now was the time when people were needed the most. In the end, Xiaoqing went to the gate of her own accord to register. She was at a high level, so she could almost see the level of the superpowered people who were lower than her at a glance. If there was any trouble, she could also suppress it by raising her hand. After all, Xiaoqing's current strength could be said to be at the top of the whole country. There weren't many people who could beat her. Xiaoqing was the most leisurely one among all the guards at the gate. Dai on the left was massaging her shoulders, Yang Hanqing on the right was feeding her fruits, and Yang Qiue on the right was taking care of the children. Water superpower, right? Level 3? Xiaoqing opened her mouth and bit the fruit that Yang Qiue handed her, then wrote it down. Since the apocalypse, something had been invented. It was a kind of tester that could test people's superpowers, but it wasn't very accurate. It could only roughly test the type of superpower, but not the level. Xiaoqing just stretched out her hand and used her power to check people's bodies accurately. The superpowered people who had been touched by her were all dumbfounded. They had never seen anyone call out their superpowers and levels just by taking their pulse. Well, here's your nameplate. Xiaoqing took an unused nameplate, then engraved some words on it. She engraved very fast, and she only used her fingernails, so she finished the words in a flash. Those superpowered people were all stunned. Next. Xiaoqing threw the nameplate over, then called the next person over. The next person hurriedly walked over and obediently stretched out his hand. Xiaoqing probed him and found out his ability and level. A level 3 wood ability user. Your superpower is very suitable for the planting area in the base. If you're interested, you can go and have a try. Thank you. The man hurriedly told her his name and other information. After Xiaoqing finished engraving, she let him in. While Xiaoqing was busy, a sudden noise came from the back of the line. She narrowed her eyes, and a dangerous light flashed in her eyes. A group of people who dared to make trouble in front of her had been dealt with in the morning, and then these people became much more obedient. She didn't expect that there would be more in the afternoon. Xiaoqing first called the guard at the door, then walked out of the small house, ready to go and see who was making trouble. Because the base had just started to develop, there were a lot of people who wanted to enter the base these 2 days. Some people came late and waited in line for a whole day. It was very normal that something would happen when they were idle. Why else would people say that they were bored? There was no shortage of idle people here. When a group of idle people gathered together, nothing happened at all, which was abnormal. However, they could make trouble in front of her. If there was a problem, it could be solved in private. If it was serious, she wouldn't be polite. Xiaoqing walked out to take a look. She was stunned at what she saw. Because one of the troublemakers was actually Mu Lin. Not long ago, she saw Mu Lin in the illusion, the Mu Lin that she missed dearly. At that time, Xiaoqing's fingertips were trembling. She took a deep breath and rubbed her eyes hard, afraid that she had seen wrongly. Then, she realized that it was really Mu Lin. Mu Lin had his hands on his waist. He was still so energetic, pointing at a woman and flipping out. There was a good-looking man standing beside him. He was quite delicate and looked quite good. It seemed that he was quite close to Mu Lin. And the other party who was quarreling with Mu Lin was also someone that Xiaoqing coincidentally knew. Fu Jinling, the mistress who knocked her to death on the street, causing her and the little bun in her stomach to be neither human nor ghost, and still unable to recover. Xiaoqing's whole body stiffened. Even if it had been a long time, when she thought of that scene, she would still stiffen and feel despair. More than that, it was the hatred that spread. Chapter 562. When she learned that Xiaoqing was in trouble, she immediately rushed back and happened to encounter the apocalypse. When she finally went to the hospital and risked her life to search, Xiaoqing was nowhere to be found. Because of this, she refused to believe that Xiaoqing was dead. She started from the hospital and went all the way north, almost circling the entire Celestial Empire. However, she could not find Xiaoqing. When she was in despair, Xiaoqing appeared in front of her. God must have heard her prayers and sent Xiaoqing to her. I thought I would never see you again. Mu Lin burped and buried herself in Xiaoqing's arms. She cried and acted like a spoiled child. Where did you go? Do you know how worried I was? The handsome man beside Mu Lin was dumbfounded. Was this still the Mu Lin who killed without blinking an eye? I went out to see twice. Xiaoqing patted Mu Lin's back and whispered, I was wrong. Didn't I see you now? We will never separate again. Mu Lin sniffed. After a long while, she smiled through her tears. I knew you would be fine. Scourges live for thousands of years. You will be fine. At this time, the man with a ferocious face was already drooling. He looked at Mu Lin and Xiaoqing with desire. In the end, the two beauties knew each other. He had already begun to dream of having two beauties at his side. Cough. He cleared his throat and said, You two don't have to rush to catch up. Let me introduce myself. I am Zhuang Qian, a peak level 4 lightning ability user. I don't know if I have the honor to know the names of the two ladies. Xiao Qing hugged Mu Lin and looked at Zhuang Qian lazily. Then she said, "Didn't you have a fierce argument with my Lin just now? You want to know our names? Are you going to take revenge?" As she spoke, Xiao Qing patted her chest with a look of fear on her face. However, in her heart, she wanted to laugh. She really didn't think much of a level 4 lightning elemental, but it had become Zhuang Qian's source of pride. Zhuang Qian slowly swallowed his saliva as Xiao Qing's chest rose and fell. He felt that his nose was about to bleed. He tried his best to make himself look more serious. Then, he said, "This is all a misunderstanding." "A misunderstanding?" Jinling, apologized to him. Zhuang Qian looked at Fu Jinling coldly. When he realized that Fu Jinling was still in a daze, he was somewhat dissatisfied. Fu Jinling felt as if a block of ice had entered her heart. Before the apocalypse, she was the daughter of a wealthy family. She lived a life of extravagance. She could use money and power to seduce married women. After the apocalypse, she was just an ordinary woman who had nothing. Except for her face, she had nothing. From the beginning, she was unwilling. To the end, the only thing she could rely on was her young and beautiful body. Then, she relied on the men she used to look down on to survive. Although she wasn't used to such a life in the beginning, it was nothing after she got used to it. She did it with men all the same. It was just that she changed to a man who didn't like her. It was good to be able to survive. However, after she relied on a master and lived a good life, she saw Xiao Qing again. The person who should have been killed by her, who should have been dead, appeared in front of her again. Why was God so unfair? She just wanted to live. No matter what, Fu Jinling didn't dare to offend Zhuang Qian. After all, without Zhuang Qian, whoever wanted to sleep with her could sleep with her. Chapter 563. She was just an ordinary person. Even an ordinary man could ravage her. Fu Jinling lowered her head and gritted her teeth. "I'm sorry, you're too quiet. I can't hear you." Mu Lin had heard their conversation. As long as she was not stupid, she would know that the person who almost killed Xiao Qing was Fu Jinling. She would not be nice to Fu Jinling. Fu Jinling lowered her head. Her face was full of humiliation. She raised her voice and said, "I'm sorry." "Sorry for what?" Xiao Qing asked expressionlessly. Fu Jinling wanted to be angry, but she did not dare to. She knew that she was no longer the girl who could do whatever she wanted. Fu Jinling's body and voice were trembling. She said with difficulty, I shouldn't have cut the line. I shouldn't have scolded you. I was wrong. I'm sorry." You're not sincere at all." Mu Lin's eyes were cold. She looked at Fu Jinling as if she was looking at a dead person. She was probably already thinking about how to kill Fu Jinling. Zhuang Qian was still reluctant to leave Fu Jinling. After all, she had been sleeping with him for so long. Besides, Fu Jinling was good-looking and obedient. He stepped forward and said, "Ladies, don't be angry. I'll teach her a lesson when we get back. Are you going to enter this base? I have a friend who is a senior in the base. Why don't you come with me? You'll be taken care of more." He was very proud when he said that. After all, he was a level 4 superpowered man, which was already very high. He also had the rare thunder power. Girls should flock to him after knowing his identity. In addition, he had a powerful background. His friend was a big boss in Hope Survivor Base. Then he looked at Xiao Qing. "You should be a staff in the base, right? My friend can take care of you. At least, he can find you an easier job with higher pay and a house for you." When Xiao Qing and Mu Lin heard this, they laughed. It sounded like he wanted to provide for them. Xiao Qing laughed so hard that she kept leaning against Mu Lin. Her stomach was starting to hurt. She said lazily, "Get out of the way first. I have a score to settle with Fu Jinling. After that, we can talk." The more Xiao Qing spoke, the colder her eyes became. The murderous intent in her eyes was almost coming out. Fu Jinling finally couldn't take it anymore. She raised her head and roared crazily, Bitch! Bitch! I knew you wouldn't let me off. Kill me if you can. Kill me. I don't regret bumping into you at all. I only regret that I didn't go back and forth a few times to kill you and that bastard in your belly, Pa. A crisp sound rang out as Mu Lin slapped Fu Jinling. Mu Lin used a lot of strength and directly slapped Fu Jinling away. Her face was swollen. Fu Jinling opened her mouth and spat out 2 teeth mixed with a mouthful of blood. Her hair was disheveled as she laughed crazily. I don't want to use your man's thing anymore. You're the only one who still treats it like a treasure. If I ask him to crawl, he will crawl. If I ask him to lick, he will lick. Before she could finish speaking, Mu Lin stepped on her face. Xiao Qing stopped Mu Lin and said indifferently, it's too easy for her to kill her like this. I can't bear to. She and her child had suffered so much. It would be too easy for her to kill Fu Jinling so easily. The most painful thing in the world was never death. Instead, it was a life worse than death, a life worse than death. With this thought, Xiao Qing looked at Fu Jinling with a much gentler gaze. She would let Fu Jinling feel the greatest pain in the world. She would let Fu Jinling live and feel the pain she had all these years. Xiao Qing had never been a merciful person, especially to her enemies. Mu Lin calmed down a lot. She was just too angry just now. After calming down, she let go of Fu Jinling. Fu Jinling still shouted like a madman, if you have the ability, kill me. If you have the ability, kill me. Zhuang Qian still had some feelings for Jinling. He went forward and tried to stop them. In his opinion, these 3 people would all be his women in the future. There was no need for internal strife. He walked in front of Xiao Qing. Before he could speak, he was wrapped around his neck by Xiao Qing's vines and pulled over. He was shocked. His first reaction was to release his lightning power. However, his power, which he thought was awesome, did not even leave a white mark on the vines. Then, his neck was broken by Xiao Qing. His head rolled on the ground twice. He did not feel any pain at all. There was still a look of surprise on his face as he looked at Fu Jinling. Fu Jinling stared blankly at the head on the ground. It was crushed by Xiao Qing's foot. The vines picked up the foreign energy crystal nucleus in the bloody brain. Xiao Qing threw it to Yang Hanqing in disgust. Fu Jinling was completely desperate. She really regretted it. Chapter 564. She shouldn't have provoked Xiao Qing from the start. Xiao Qing wasn't someone she could afford to provoke. However, it was too late to regret now. The mistake had been made and the hatred had been formed. It was such a deep hatred that it couldn't be resolved. Fu Jinling was in despair. She even started to hate everyone, including Lin Qifan. If Lin Qifan hadn't taken the initiative to seduce her, would she have fallen in love with Lin Qifan? Would she have done that to Xiao Qing? She hated her parents. If they hadn't ignored her, would she have thought that money could settle everything and cause that car accident? As for Xiao Qing, her hatred was lighter. It was more regret and despair. Xiao Qing couldn't be bothered to think about what Fu Jinling was thinking. She temporarily handed the job of receiving people at the door to someone else. Then, she took Mu Lin and her group back. When she went back, she sent someone to call Tang Tianda. Tang Tianda was her underling. It would be a waste not to use him. When Tang Tianda came over, he saw 2 women sitting on the sofa. They were surrounded by men. None of them looked bad. Boss, why are you looking for me? Tang Tianda had just finished his work. After everything that had happened, he had become more open-minded and had improved a lot. Especially after being oppressed by Xiao Qing for so long. When he returned to the base, even Tang Yaozu was surprised to find that his son had become successful. Of course, what followed was complicated work. Tang Tianda expressed that he was happy and in pain. Xiao Qing picked up Fu Jinling, who was tied to the side, and threw her at Tang Tianda's feet. Then, she said, "This is my enemy. I know that you have a lot of tricks up your sleeve. I'll hand her over to you. I only have one request. Make her live a life worse than death, but she won't die." Tang Tianda couldn't help but shiver. Then, he had a deep admiration and pity for Fu Jinling, who dared to offend Xiao Qing. He had never seen Xiaoqing hate someone so much. Live a life worse than death, but she won't die. TSK TSK. Tang Tianda shook his head, his face full of fake compassion. Then, he was kicked out by Xiaoqing. Hurry up and take him away. Tang Tianda hurriedly said, Boss, don't worry. I'll make sure she suffers more pain than death, but she won't die no matter what. After that, Tang Tianda took them away. After he left, Xiaoqing asked Mu Lin, where did you go after you left? I almost walked through the entire Celestial Empire. Maybe it's fate, but I didn't meet you. Do you know? I was in despair, but I didn't expect that we would meet again after I lost all hope. Mu Lin lay in Xiaoqing's arms like a child. After a while, he asked, is this your son? Xiaoqing nodded and said to the man beside Mu Lin, are you Mu Lin's friend? Chiyue, take this gentleman out for a walk. Take Hanqing Dai and Bao Bao with you. I have some private words to say to Mu Lin. Xiaoan, you go first. Just take it as familiarizing yourself with the base. Mu Lin said lightly. The man nodded and went out with Yang Chiyue and the others. After they all left, Xiaoqing said, actually, I'm not a human anymore. When the car accident happened, I should have died. I didn't expect to meet the end of the world. I'm lucky to have kept my life. However, my son and I have become zombie-like. She said helplessly, actually, I should say that we are zombies. Mu Lin was surprised, but there was no fear. She curiously came over and touched Xiaoqing's belly, then touched Xiaoqing's face. Finally, she touched Xiaoqing's body from head to toe before reluctantly letting go. She said in a surprised tone, it's really cold. There's no heartbeat. It's amazing. Chapter 565. Xiaoqing looked helpless. Even if you are not afraid, can you pretend a little and give me a sense of achievement? Mu Lin immediately acted exaggeratedly, so pitiful, so scary. I am so scared. Xiaoqing rolled her eyes and said, it is all in the past. I am now in my friend's base, Jiang City. Most of the zombies there are there, but it is very peaceful and no one will disturb me. I saw the 3 handsome guys beside you. Mu Lin winked. Did you get all of them? Speaking of the 3 of them, Xiaoqing's mood was much better. The taller and stronger one is Yang Hanqing. He is also a soldier and has a tender face. The one beside Zheng Tai is Dai. He is also a zombie, but he is slowly recovering his memory. The last one is flirtatious, Yang Hanqing. After some time, when Dai recovers and there is nothing else, we will get married. Mu Lin was very envious. Why are there so many handsome guys here when it comes to you? I want one too. What about your boyfriend? Xiaoqing could not help but pat her head. I remember that your boyfriend is not the one beside you. He is dead. Mu Lin was a little sad. When I found him, he was already a zombie. I killed him myself. I know that he would not want to become such a monster. My condolences. Xiaoqing patted her head. The apocalypse was like this. The separation of life and death always came so fast. No one could predict what would happen in the next second. I have already accepted it. Now I am living a good life. Mu Lin smiled. At the beginning, she was probably in despair. When the most painful period was over, the scars would slowly fade. People should always look forward. Of course, living in memories would only bring about pain. So, that's Xiaoan. Is he your new boyfriend? Xiaoqing comforted Mu Lin and quickly changed the topic. Mu Lin said lazily, he is not my boyfriend. At most, he is a boy toy. I met him in the last base. He is good-looking and has a good life. I don't have a companion, so I temporarily let him stay. It is easy to be lonely when you are old. Just consider him as someone to relieve your loneliness. Xiaoqing nodded and did not say anything. She had to live her own life. She could not arrange anything for Mu Lin. She could also see that Mu Lin was hiding some bad things from her. If there was no accident, Mu Lin would definitely not have such an attitude. She did not intend to dig up Mu Lin's scars and ask her what had happened. She just hugged Mu Lin silently. Xiaoqing believed that she and time were enough to heal all scars. At the worst, she could find a good man for Mu Lin in the future, handsome and considerate, to warm her heart. The two of them chatted for a long time and talked about their recent situations. After that, Xiaoqing said to Mu Lin, "Hope Survivor Base was built by an acquaintance of mine. If you want to settle down here, that's fine. Of course, I hope that you can come with me to Jiang City. But there are zombies there, and I'm afraid that you won't be used to it. I won't force you, so you can make your own choice. Even if you want to live in Hope Survivor Base, it's fine." Mu Lin did not hesitate. "I will go with you." She held Xiaoqing's arm tightly and said, "It was not easy to find you. I don't want to be separated from you. Aren't they just zombies? What are you afraid of? My current strength isn't weak either." Xiaoqing had already known that she was a psychic paranormal. Moreover, her psychic paranormal was very aggressive, which was completely different from Xiaotong's. "Since you've said so, don't say that I didn't give you a choice when the time comes." Xiaoqing patted her head and said, "What about Xiaoan? Break him off." Mu Lin waved his hand without any reluctance. "There are gigolos everywhere, but you're the only one. Don't worry, I won't let your secret be leaked, but you have to compensate me with a handsome guy." "Okay, what type do you want? What do you think of me?" Xiaoqing held her face and said. Mu Lin immediately burst into laughter and rolled around in her arms. As she rolled around, her tears flowed out. "Why is this world so unfair? You've already suffered a lot, but those hardships and pain are still constantly added to your body. The heavens are so unfair. Fuck the heavens, they're not willing to give you any good things. I have both of you." Xiaoqing's eyes were gentle. She had lived a bumpy life and had been homeless for half of her life, but she did not have the slightest bit of resentment. Because when she lost, she gained enough. People should always be content. Contentment brings joy. If you only focused on the things you lost, then you would constantly regret and lose them. This was a principle she had known since she was very young. "Ah Qing, does your son have a name?" Mu Lin, who felt that this topic was too heavy, quickly changed the topic. She asked excitedly, "What's his name?" Xiaoqing was expressionless. After a while, she said, "He hasn't woken up yet." Mu Lin was speechless. "Let's not talk about how old your son looks first. He was born more than a year ago, right? He doesn't even have a name. How much do you dislike your son? Even if he is the son of a scumbag, it is not his fault." Mu Lin glared and said, "You can't vent your anger on the child because of that scumbag. The child is innocent. Ah Lin. You clearly know." Xiaoqing was still expressionless. "Don't tell me you forgot." Mu Lin covered her forehead and said, "All right, I shouldn't have placed my hopes on a bad name. But have you ever thought that it's not a good thing that the child doesn't have a name? When your child grows up, you can't always call him Bao Bao or Bao Bao. When you meet someone to introduce him, you can't always call him Bao Bao, right?" Xiaoqing reflected deeply on her actions and said, "Then what should we do? Think of a name." Mu Lin was very excited. Bao Bao can be a pet name, but it has to have a proper name. Xiaoqing touched her chin and said, "Actually, I've thought about his proper name. Xiao Tuanchuan, which means round and round. Whether it's the meaning or the literal meaning, it's pretty good." Mu Lin, haha. Chapter 566. As expected, she shouldn't have placed her hopes on a bad name. Mu Lin sniffed and said, "Can't you come up with a more normal name for the baby's psychological trauma?" Xiaoqing felt wronged. "Isn't this name good? How about Xiao Mingxi? Ming means the sun and moon, and Xi means the Xi of dawn. They both symbolize light and hope, and a beautiful future." Mu Lin held her chin and said, "A long time ago, I thought about it. When you have a baby and I have a baby, it'll be best if your baby is a boy and mine is a girl. That way, I can let my baby marry your baby and fulfill my wish of marrying you." Xiaoqing's mouth twitched slightly. Mu Lin's wish of marrying her came from when they were young. At that time, they were still in the orphanage. Mu Lin was especially thin and small and was often bullied by other children. Every time, Xiaoqing would step forward and protect her. Mu Lin had been very clingy to Xiaoqing since she was very young. At that time, the two of them were often hungry. Xiaoqing would secretly go to the kitchen to steal food or snatch other children's food. After she got food, she would split it into 2 portions and give the bigger portion to Mu Lin. She ate less. Mu Lin still remembered that one winter, the auntie in the orphanage treated them harshly. It was normal for them to not have enough to eat. The hungrier they were, the colder they were, and the colder they were, the hungrier they were. It became an endless cycle. The two of them hugged each other and covered themselves with a thin blanket. Mu Lin was so hungry that she cried. Xiaoqing had no choice but to go out to steal food and was caught. She was beaten black and blue by the auntie and was locked in the storeroom to reflect on her actions. The storeroom was damp and cold. In addition to the injuries on her body, Xiaoqing had a fever. Mu Lin secretly came to find her and cried by the window. She gave Mu Lin half a deep-fried dough cake, and Mu Lin cried even harder. Neither of them was willing to eat it. In the end, they leaned against the window and took a bite and passed it to each other. Neither of them was willing to take a bigger bite. The palm-sized deep-fried dough cake took them half an hour to eat. Xiaoqing's high fever almost took her life. It was Mu Lin who went to the dean. Seeing that Xiaoqing was dying, the dean was afraid that she would die in the orphanage and ruin the reputation of the orphanage. So, he found a doctor for her. After that incident, little Mu Lin told Xiaoqing that when he grew up, he would marry her and be her wife. Let's call him Xiaoqing. I don't want him to bear too many people's hopes. It's fine as long as he's happy. Xiaoqing chuckled. His nickname can also be Little Whistle. Mu Lin said helplessly, anyway, it's fine as long as he's not called Xiao Tuanchuan. Xiaozi is Xiaozi. At least he's lively. After deciding on Little Bun's name, the two chatted for a while. When it was time for dinner, Xiaoqing dragged Mu Lin to help her. After the two of them finished cooking, the men who had gone out for a walk came back. Although Xiaoqing was terrible at naming, she had always been very confident in herself. She couldn't help but show off. Baby, from today onwards, you have a name. It's Xiaozi. Do you like it? Little Bun was dumbfounded. Then, he heard Mu Lin say coldly, the name she gave before was Xiao Tuanchuan. Little Bun immediately said, I like it. Xiaozi was much better than Xiao Tuanchuan. In order to prevent his mommy from making him Xiao Tuanchuan on a whim, he had better accept the name Xiaozi. Little Whistle, be good. Hurry and wash your hands. The food is ready. We can eat soon. Xiaoqing urged. Chapter 567. Yang Qiue then carried Little Bun to wash his hands. After washing his hands, Yang Hanqing went to the kitchen to help serve the dishes. As there were many people today, Xiaoqing cooked a lot of dishes. There were 8 dishes and a soup. Mu Lin calmly occupied Yang Qiue's previous seat. Yang Qiue had to carry her child to the seat opposite Xiaoqing. Her expression was that of an abandoned woman. During the meal, Xiaoqing had a simple chat with the man called Xiaoan. After all, he was brought here by Mu Lin, so she had to give him some face. However, as they chatted, she felt that something was wrong. This man called Xiaoan had been trying to flirt with her. At first, Xiaoqing thought that the flirtatious glance was for Mu Lin, who was sitting next to her. However, after looking left and right for a few times, she felt that something was wrong. According to the angle, the flirtatious glance was really for her. Xiaoqing was stunned at that time. She was really not Mr. Wang next door, and she had no interest in her best friend's man. The point was that Xiaoan's flirtatious glance was very subtle. Other than Xiaoqing, the person involved, no one else seemed to have noticed it. She was flirted with inexplicably. Xiaoqing decided to be blind. Anyway, she just pretended not to see. After all, she had just reunited with Mu Lin. She did not want to create any trouble and affect her good mood today. Therefore, she could only swallow this fly into her stomach. She knew that it was a fly, but she still forced herself to swallow it. The feeling of swallowing a fly into her stomach was really bad. She could not even eat the delicious dishes. This situation continued until they finished their meal and were ready to go to bed. Only then did they feel relieved. As they were finally reunited today, Shaoqing abandoned her 3 wives and 4 concubines and was ready to take an afternoon nap with Mu Lin. During the afternoon nap, she could not help but ask, "That Xiaoan, are you really going to dump him?" Mu Lin nodded and said, "Anyway, I definitely won't bring him to Rivertown. I don't have much trust in him. He's just an ordinary person, so I guess he can't stand it. At most, I'll give him some compensation. Let's just call it a day. I'll help him settle down in Hope Survivor Base, then I'll tell him." That's good too. In the end, Shaoqing swallowed back what had happened. After all, it was not something to be proud of. Since the 2 of them were going to separate, it was better to avoid unnecessary trouble. The next day, Shaoqing went to work at the entrance again. She asked Tang Tianda to help Xiaoan settle down. Mu Lin went as well. No matter what, they had been together for a long time and had some feelings for each other. Mu Lin was also a person who valued relationships, so he wanted to make arrangements for him first. After a busy day, Shaoqing prepared to buy some fresh fruits and vegetables and a few bottles of wine so that she could drink with Mu Lin in the evening. At night, both of them drank a lot. On the other hand, the men didn't drink much. Mu Lin was completely drunk. He hugged Shaoqing and kept shouting that he wanted to marry her. He would kill anyone who tried to stop him. Then, he hung on Shaoqing's body like a koala. She couldn't pull him off. He was very strong. Shaoqing was very helpless. She could only say, "Let's sleep together tonight. Hanqing, please help Xiaoan settle down and find him an empty room." Mu Lin was busy the whole night. When she fell asleep, it was already midnight. Shaoqing let out a sigh of relief. She was going to wash her face and then sleep. She was so happy today that she might not be able to fall asleep. When Shaoqing reached the bathroom, the door opened. The man called Xiao and walked out while drying his hair. Chapter 568. After settling Xiaoan down, Shaoqing was ready to leave. She didn't even ask about Fu Jinling's fate, because she knew that Tang Tianda would treat her well. She didn't ask, but Tang Tianda would tell her. It was a good opportunity to take credit. It's hard for ordinary men to find wives nowadays. They don't even have enough to eat, so naturally, they can't afford to buy sex. I think that Fu Jinling is quite manly, so I gave her to those men. I guarantee that at least 50 men visit her every day. There's absolutely no time for her to be idle. Tang Tianda had an "I'm such a good person" expression on his face. Then, he said, in order to prevent her from hurting herself because she was too grateful, I broke her arms and legs, knocked out the teeth in her mouth, and chained her to the bed. I guarantee that she will thoroughly enjoy it. Mu Lin couldn't help but shudder. He raised his finger to praise Tang Tianda. Amazing. Shaoqing didn't have any fluctuations in her heart. She just reached out and touched Tang Tianda's head, encouraging him. Very good. Okay, it's almost done here. Let's go back. There's still a piece of land in the east that hasn't been opened yet. Let's go back and work. Tang Tianda was speechless. Shaoqing brought Mu Lin to Jiang City to let him familiarize himself with the place. This was Shaoqing's base camp. No matter how turbulent the outside world was, it wouldn't affect this place. I've left a special scent on your body. All the zombies here won't attack you. You can go in and out freely. Shaoqing brought Mu Lin around first, such as her plantation base, and then her secret base. In fact, it was just a small vegetable garden behind the house. There was nothing else in it. She paved a small vegetable field with the special red soil. The mutated plant that looked like a heart was planted on top of it. Some mutated plants with great destructive power were planted around it to prevent people from stealing her baby. After looking around the entire Jiang City, Shaoqing said to Mu Lin, "It's safe here, but there's no one around. Other than me, there are only a few of my friends. It's inevitable that you'll be lonely. If you can't stand it, you can go to the Hope Survivor Base or a nearby base. Come and see me when you miss me. Mu Lin snorted. Are you abandoning your old love now that you have a new one? Yes, you have 3 handsome guys with you. You don't need me anymore. You don't like me, so you want to chase me away. Xiaoqing looked helpless. How could there be such a thing? Okay, I won't say it anymore, okay? Let's go and see the room I prepared for you. Xiaoqing had prepared a room for her a long time ago when she had just arrived in Jiang City. She had always believed that she could find Mu Lin and knew that Mu Lin was willing to stay for her. Hence, she had prepared a room for Mu Lin long ago. The pink bedsheets, the pink curtains, and even the carpet on the floor were pink. It looked extremely cute. Mu Lin, who had a girlish heart since she was young, howled and threw herself on the bed. Then, she started to roll around. There was a pink bear on the bed. Ever since she was in the orphanage, she had a dream to have her own princess room filled with her favorite things. It would be clean and unsewn. There would be a furry blanket on the floor so that she could roll around without getting hurt or dirted. It would be best if there was a big wardrobe filled with clothes. They were all hers. She could wear whatever she wanted and throw away whatever she wore. Now, it had all come true. Mu Lin hugged the bear and rolled from one end of the bed to the other like a child. Chapter 569. Both of them were abandoned. She had a weak heart and her family was probably poor. Moreover, she was a girl and was unwilling to spend a lot of money on her treatment, so they abandoned her. Fortunately, her parents still had some conscience and left her at the entrance of the orphanage instead of on the streets or in the wilderness. Xiaoqing was even more pitiful. She was picked up by an old granny who was picking up scraps. When she was picked up, Xiaoqing was lying in the rubbish bin. In the winter, she was wrapped in a thin layer of swaddling clothes and her face was purple from the cold. The old granny liked children very much. Unfortunately, she could not afford to raise them, so she could only send them to the orphanage. A few years ago, the old granny would often visit Xiaoqing at the orphanage. When Xiaoqing was 4 years old, the old granny also passed away. In this world, there was no one else who would care about Xiaoqing. Only Xiaoqing and Mu Lin were left to depend on each other. They were not related by blood and were not relatives, but they were closer than relatives. Ah Qing, your dream and my dream have both come true. It's so good. Mu Lin hugged the bear and panted on the ground. She turned over and pressed the bear under her body. Then she said, "Let's not go out. It's good to be self-sufficient in Jiangcheng." Xiaoqing smiled and did not reply. She just patted her head. How could they not go out? It was not a good thing to be completely cut off from the world. It was just a joke. Even if they could, what about the children? Speaking of this, Xiaoqing was very worried. Since the end of the world, there had not been a single newborn. To be precise, there was not a single mother who was pregnant after the end of the world. If this was the real end of the world, then it was really too late for the entire human race. That was the real end of the world. After giving Mu Lin some space to familiarize herself with her room, Xiaoqing went out. She stood at the door and took a deep breath. She felt that the knot in her heart had been completely untied. The revenge had been taken. She had found her family and her lover by her side. It was almost complete. If her life was a book, it would have come to an end now. Sister Qing. Jiyu Panpan came back with Xiao Tong. Jiyu Panpan was very lively and happy today. Sister, you came back from the new survivor base? Xiao Qing patted Jiyu Panpan and asked, "Where did you go?" "I was bored at home, so I left my brother and asked him to look after the house. I took Tong Tong out to play. Sister Qing, take a look at this." She stuffed something into Xiao Qing's hands as if she was presenting a treasure. Xiao Qing took a look and saw that it was a crystal core. It was at least level 6. She was stunned. "Where did this come from?" "I killed him." Jiyu Panpan's face was filled with pride. Xiao Tong nodded hesitantly. "You're only at level 5 now. Only that thing can still be used. The only thing better than cucumbers is that you don't have to move yourself. It's easy. Xiaoqing did not try to persuade her again. She was determined to take her out for a walk. When she met a suitable person, she would not say that. The opportunity to go out came quickly. The planting base in Jiang City was very big. The vegetables and fruits were plentiful, and there were only a few living people in Jiang City. It was impossible to finish them all. Vegetables and fruits couldn't be stored for a long time. They would definitely go bad. Xiaoqing was thinking about selling the unfinished ones. Then she contacted Qin Zishi. If she sold them to the capital, they might be worried that Xiaoqing would put some corpse poison in the vegetables. If she sold them to Qin Zishi, there was no need to worry. Chapter 571. The Qin family had a lot of troops under their command, so they could consume a lot of fruits and vegetables. Tang Tianda had already contacted her in advance. Hope Survivor Base had just been established, and there were many things waiting to be done. Especially fresh fruits and vegetables, they were in short supply. The Tang family's father and son trusted Xiaoqing a lot. Of course, a large part of this trust was because these fruits and vegetables were all grown by Tang Tianda. Tang Yaozu didn't trust others, but he couldn't not trust his own son. Xiaoqing used a lot of fruits and vegetables to exchange for a lot of nuclei. She sold them at a very low price. It wasn't as simple as a friendship price, it was like a clearance sale. After all, she didn't want to sell them professionally. It was just that she was too excited at that time and planted a lot. Now that she couldn't finish them, she sold them. The price was about the same as a half-buy, half-free. The low-level nuclei were all hoarded by Xiaoqing and given to Yin Yi. The high-level nuclei were given to her friends out of kindness. She tried to get everyone to carry a bag of high-level nuclei. In case something happened, they would be able to back them up on the spot. There was a room in Xiaoqing's residence that looked like a warehouse. It was filled with crystallic nuclei, ranging from level 1 to level 5. Basically, whoever needed them would go directly to the room to get them. If the nuclei in the room weren't enough, then they would tell Xiaoqing, and Xiaoqing would go out to hunt. She had always been a person who treated her enemies coldly, but treated her own people well. This was also why so many people were willing to break away from the whole world for her. For example, Jiyu Panpan and the others were willing to leave the normal human society and live in a city full of zombies for her. There were too many fruits and vegetables, and they had to be transported to 2 survivor bases. Xiaoqing prepared to go out personally. Yang Hanqing took Jiyu Panpan, Jiyu Chuan, and Tang Tianda to Hope Survivor Base to send them off. Xiaoqing took Dai Yang Chiue and Mu Lin to Jingju. Xiao Tong was left to look after the house and the children. The 3 SUVs were filled to the brim. In order to prevent the food from spoiling too early, Jiyu Chuan had frozen all the vegetables and fruits that were not afraid of freezing. It was like a natural refrigerator. In a short period of time, the ice would not melt, and the food would not spoil. Once they reached the place, the food would be eaten quickly. Naturally, there was no need to worry about spoilage. After the motorcade left, Xiaoqing said to Mu Lin, "Look at more men when you're out. Even if you don't like any of them, there's no harm in looking at them more. If you do like any of them, just tell me. It's best if they submit to you, but it's also fine if they don't. We can directly bring them back." Xiaoqing was very domineering. Jiang City is very big. Even if you bring back a company, we can still afford to raise them. When the time comes, we'll let the obedient ones go. Anyway, there are zombies everywhere. They won't dare to run out of the city. If they don't listen to us, we'll tie them up and wait until they're obedient. The corner of Mu Lin's mouth twitched, and then he said, "My sister, can you stop thinking about finding me a man all day long? You might as well find me some suitable props so that I can entertain myself." Xiaoqing immediately chose to ignore his thoughts, and then she began to change the topic. "Let me tell you, there's a donkey barbecue shop in Jingju. The taste is very good, but the price is a bit expensive. After we send the food, I'll take you around Jingju to look for delicious and fun things. How about it? Don't mention men. Everything can be discussed. You're making me hungry. Mu Lin touched his belly and then stretched out his fingers. I want to eat 3:30 is not a problem. Xiaoqing successfully changed the topic, and then she said to Mu Lin, there's a shop whose tofu pudding is also excellent. It's just that the owner of this shop has a very strong taste. He actually likes savory tofu pudding. It's simply heresy. Can savory tofu pudding be eaten? Can it be eaten? No. Only sweet tofu pudding is the truth. Mu Lin was speechless. She suddenly felt that after being separated for so long, she could no longer keep up with Xiaoqing's brain circuit. Who taught her to be such a weirdo? The Xiaoqing in the past was not so funny. Savory tofu pudding is as terrible as meat dumplings, Xiaoqing concluded, but that's not the point. The point is that the owner's tofu pudding is really delicious. Mu Lin was expressionless. She suddenly wanted to sit in another car. The Xiaoqing in the past was simply the current Jiu Chuan. If you didn't take the initiative to ask her, she wouldn't even speak. After not seeing her for more than a year, she had become a chatterbox. The apocalypse was really scary. When it was noon, they stopped on time, set up camp, and prepared to eat. Regardless of whether Mu Lin was on a mission with others or traveling together, he had never eaten so punctually. In the apocalypse, there were dangers everywhere. Who would eat on time? Most of them walked until they reached a safe place. After confirming that there was no danger around, everyone was divided into two groups. One group was responsible for eating, while the other group was responsible for guarding and patrolling. When the first group finished eating, the patrolling group would come to eat. When they were eating, they were very nervous. They were afraid that zombies, mutated animals, and even mutated plants would jump out and kill them. Who would be like Xiaoqing and the others? Once they saw the time, they didn't care about where they were and immediately stopped to set up camp and prepare to eat. And there wasn't even a patrolling group. Some were responsible for collecting firewood, some were responsible for cooking, and some were responsible for sitting and waiting to eat. For example, Mu Lin. Since the apocalypse, it was the first time that she had experienced such a leisurely life in the wild. Xiaoqing was cutting vegetables beside her, and then said to her, compared to the base, it's actually more interesting outside. In the base, you can only eat the common vegetables, fruits, and dried meat. But in the wild, there are ingredients everywhere. All kinds of wild vegetables and animals. You can eat whatever you want. Do you feel like camping? Mu Lin was speechless. Sure enough, as long as one had the strength, one could live well anywhere. One didn't have to care about the environment. People like Xiaoqing could live like fish in water even in the apocalypse. But what he said was really asking for a beating. How could someone like her, who had lived a tight life for a whole year, endure this? Mu Lin was expressionless. She thought angrily, and then raised her hand. Can we have barbecue for lunch? Like the one you barbecued last time. Put more cumin. If they wanted to be corrupt, they should be corrupt together. Chapter 572. Mu Lin hadn't been so happy for a long time. Her whole life after the apocalypse was oppressive and painful. In addition to struggling to survive and facing those conspiracies, she missed Xiaoqing. Only now did she feel relaxed. According to the map, there is a base in front. Let's rest here tonight. Xiaoqing looked at the map and said. Although it was safe for them to rest in the wild, the comfort of living in a tent was much worse than living in a normal room. Therefore, it was okay to waste some time to travel. They arrived at the base before it was completely dark. At this time, the sky was already slightly dark. The guards guarding the gate of the base were in groups of 3 to 5, sitting in a corner and playing cards. 2 guards were left to guard the gate, but there was no one outside. It was a happy thing that they didn't have to line up. There were no ordinary people in Xiaoqing's team, so they entered the base quickly. After a simple check, they entered the base. At this time, it was already very late. Even the people who were working in the base had already returned to their own residences. Xiaoqing led a few of her friends to walk around the base. She felt that something was wrong. This base was too quiet. Usually, there would be many people outside even at night. At least, there would be people walking around. In this base, they would occasionally meet a few people, who looked very numb and stiff. They were like level 1 zombies. If it weren't for their lively faces, people would really think that they were zombies. Xiaoqing and her friends went to the base hall and rented a room temporarily to rest for the night. When they left with the key, Xiaoqing felt that the base staff's cheeks were a little dark under the light. Deep doubts were engraved in her heart, but Xiaoqing didn't think much about it. They had been walking for a day, especially Mu Lin and Yang Qiue. They must be very tired. It was better for them to rest early. Before going to bed, Xiaoqing cooked a pot of porridge and gave everyone a bowl. Then, they went back to sleep. Around midnight, Xiaoqing suddenly heard some noises outside. After all, they were in someone else's base. Xiaoqing was more alert and didn't sleep well. Therefore, she woke up immediately when she heard the strange noise. After waking up, Xiaoqing listened carefully. It was very noisy outside, and the noise was getting louder and louder. Now, not only her, but everyone else woke up. What's going on? Mu Lin rubbed his eyes in confusion, and then said, "Why is it so noisy outside? Something might have happened. You put on your clothes first. I'll go out and take a look." Xiaoqing and Mu Lin were in the same room. Dai and Yang Qiue were sleeping in the next room. They heard the noise and walked out. Xiaoqing poked her head out of the window and was stunned. There were zombies outside, and they were all slow-moving level 1 zombies. They were densely packed. There were no ordinary people as far as the eye could see. It was as if everyone in the base had become zombies. However, when they entered the base last night, they saw many ordinary people. It was only one night. How did it suddenly become like this? Xiaoqing wasn't the only one who was stunned. Yang Qiue and the others who had put on their clothes and came over. Everyone was stunned. How did it suddenly become like this? Mu Lin was stunned. Xiaoqing calmed down instantly. "You all stay in the room. Don't go out. I'll go out and take a look." Chapter 573. Be careful. Mu Lin knew that she was not afraid of zombies, so he quickly reminded her. Xiaoqing did not open the door, but went out through the window. After going out, she found that there were more zombies outside than in the room. These zombies looked like the first-level zombies that had just mutated at the beginning of the apocalypse. They were especially fragile, with stiff limbs and badly rotten bodies. But how could there be so many first-level zombies suddenly? First-level zombies were rare in the apocalypse, because most of the zombies had evolved for a year and were at least second-level or third-level. In other words, these zombies should have just mutated tonight. It was very likely that all the ordinary people in the base had become zombies. Then, where was the source? Xiaoqing walked through the zombie crowd. Even if all the ordinary people in the base had become zombies, there were still paranormals. Paranormals could not be infected. Where were the paranormals in the base? Soon, Xiaoqing found a living person. The man was hiding in the guard room at the entrance of the base. He was leaning against the window, trembling and looking out. Xiaoqing suddenly appeared in front of him, which scared him so much that he almost screamed. Fortunately, he knew that he should not attract zombies, so he covered his mouth tightly. His eyes were wide open because of fear. "Open the door." Xiaoqing knocked on the window and said. The man was so scared that he kept shaking his head. He did not dare to open the door. What if the zombies also rushed in? What should he do? His superpower was very useless, and his level was very low. He only got the job of a guard by relying on his connections. He did not expect that such a thing would happen tonight when it was his turn to be on guard duty. He saw with his own eyes that his companion, who went out to the toilet, was surrounded by zombies and gnawed into bones. Now, he was completely scared out of his wits. It would be strange if he dared to open the door. Xiaoqing said faintly, "Either you open the door, or I break it. You choose." The man looked sad and finally opened the door. After all, if the door was opened, it could be closed. If the door was broken, the zombies would really be unhindered. He quickly opened the door and said, "Quickly, quickly, quickly, come in." Xiaoqing walked in and he immediately closed the door. He leaned against the door and slowly slid down. His forehead was covered in sweat. What happened? Xiaoqing kicked him and said, "Get up and tell me why there are so many zombies in the base all of a sudden." I don't know." The man was about to cry. He stammered, "I found that those zombies were familiar. They were all ordinary people in the base. But I don't know why they suddenly became like this. There were no signs before this." Xiaoqing frowned and said, "It's impossible for everyone to become zombies overnight without any reason. What about the paranormals in the base? Previously, there were paranormals in the base who found a large greenhouse. There were vegetables and fruits in it. They grew very messy. It should be the seeds of the ripe fruits and vegetables that grew after Doomsday. There were many kinds of vegetables and fruits that we don't have in the base. Moreover, the greenhouse was in a town where there were many zombies. So, the base's leaders sent a mercenary group there, but they haven't returned yet." Speaking up to this point, his expression was particularly miserable. Who would have thought that such a thing would happen right after they left? We can rule out the possibility that zombies entered the base and infected everyone. After all, zombies can't silently infect everyone. Xiaoqing touched his chin and had a flash of inspiration. The zombie virus wasn't necessarily transmitted by zombies. There was another possibility, which was food and water. Although it would be much slower to infect people through food and water, it was still very easy. Then there was another problem. There were generally two kinds of water sources in the base. One was made by water paranormals, and the other was purified by the base's purifier. Those bottles and barrels of water were already very rare. Most of the drinking water in the base was made by the paranormals to water the ground. The water used in daily life was purified. Why would all the ordinary people suddenly be infected? Unless someone was crazy enough to poison them. "Where's your base chief?" Xiaoqing felt that this matter must be discussed with their base chief first to find out the reason. The man's face was dull. "Sister, there are zombies outside. Are you going to find our base chief?" "I'm going to find your base chief," Xiaoqing said coldly, "and you have to show me the way." The man was terrified. Tears and snot flowed down his face. "I still have a young son, a wife, and an old mother to take care of. Big sister, warrior, please spare me. I really don't want to die. There are so many zombies outside. We'll die." Xiaoqing ignored him. She grabbed his collar and dragged him out. She kicked the door open. The sound of the door being kicked immediately attracted a lot of zombies to turn their heads towards this side. The man was so scared that he almost peed. He was over 1.8 meters tall, but he was crying and snot. He looked particularly terrified. Xiaoqing was expressionless. She just carried the man out silently. The man was very tall, so when Xiaoqing carried him outside, his legs were dragging on the ground. It looked a little funny. When some zombies smelled the man's flesh and blood and walked over, he immediately screamed in fear. Halfway through, his face changed. He didn't dare to scream anymore, because it would only attract more zombies. Xiaoqing raised her hand and slapped the surrounding zombies to death. She didn't even raise her eyes. At that time, the man was dumbfounded. His mouth was so wide open that an egg could be stuffed into it. Just a moment ago, he thought that the sky had already collapsed and that he was about to die with Xiaoqing. In the end, in the next second, he realized that Xiaoqing wasn't leading him to die. She was leading him to show off and fly. Xiaoqing walked all the way. The zombies passing by were slapped into meat patties by her. In the second half, she didn't even bother to do anything. She directly released the big flower and let it eat. She also had vines that were responsible for pulling away the approaching zombies. "Where is your base chief?" Xiaoqing asked lazily. The man felt that he had a backer. He hurriedly said, "Go straight, then turn left. Go straight ahead. The biggest house is very conspicuous. Chapter 574. The chief of the base was a fat man. When Xiaoqing arrived, he was going downstairs. Because the front door had been occupied by zombies, he went to the window and got stuck there. Half of his body was hanging in the air, which looked a little funny. Xiaoqing couldn't help but laugh. She stretched out her vines and pulled the fat man out of the window. The fat man was sweating. He couldn't help but take out a handkerchief to wipe his sweat, then said, "I'm sorry, I've never seen you before. Are you from outside?" Xiaoqing nodded, then asked, "What's the situation now? Do you know anything about it?" The chief shook his head, then said, "There was no warning. I was also shocked. The most important thing now is to summon all the superpowered people and control the situation." Speaking of this, the fat on his face couldn't help twitching. Obviously, he was distressed. Even if the situation was controlled and all the zombies were eliminated, the base could be considered as useless. Although ordinary people didn't have any abilities, they were an indispensable part of a base. Superpowered people were responsible for maintaining the safety of the base, or going out to look for supplies, and other work that required strength. Some of the daily and complicated work was done by ordinary people. This included planting, construction, and even many researchers were ordinary people. The number of ordinary people was far greater than the number of superpowered people. If all the ordinary people turned into zombies, even if the zombies were eliminated, no one would be able to do the daily work. Their base could be considered as useless. It would be too difficult to start anew. It was estimated that they could only merge with other bases. Xiaoqing nodded, then said, "First, summon all the superpowered people." Most of the superpowered people in the base had gone out, so when the outside was in chaos, all of them hid and didn't dare to go out. They quietly waited for the news. As soon as the fat chief shouted on the radio, they breathed a sigh of relief and hurriedly gathered. The zombies outside were actually not high level. They could even be said to be pathetically low. If they encountered such a group of zombies in normal times, they wouldn't be afraid. However, this group of zombies were all people they were familiar with, and all of them had turned into zombies overnight. It was too strange, so they were panicking. The base chief sent out a group of people to clean up the zombies, while the others began to investigate the source of the zombies. When Xiaoqing was walking around, she realized that the zombies were evolving very quickly. It had only been half an hour since she woke up, and some zombies had already evolved to level 2. Although level 2 was still very low, if they could maintain this rate of evolution, it would be a little scary. When all the zombies were cleared and all the corpses were piled up in the square, the paranormals were in low spirits. All the corpses here were people they were familiar with. After the apocalypse, they had been together for a year, and it was easy for them to develop feelings for each other. Some of them were even their relatives and friends, but now, they had all become corpses. They didn't even find the source of their zombies. Overnight, these people turned into monsters for no reason. Xiaoqing was very calm. After all, she had nothing to do with these people. Immediately, Xiaoqing said, "I think the problem may be in the water or the food. Can you take out the water and food you have today to check?" The fat chief frowned, then said, "Whether it's the water or the food, we have been eating for so long. There shouldn't be any problem." Chapter 575. At the end of his sentence, he suddenly realized that the past 2 days were indeed different. Normally, they drank water made by superpowered people, but for the past 2 days, they drank purified water. Did the problem really lie in the water? At this time, Mu Lin and Dai Yang Chiwe also came over. Xiaoqing took them and asked the fat base chief to take out water and food. Yang Chiwe stepped forward first and began to check. The others also paid close attention to it. After all, they wanted to find out the truth. This base was relatively small, and there weren't many researchers in it. Yang Chiwe was the only one they could rely on. The more Yang Chiwe studied, the angrier his face became. After a while, he said, "There's something wrong with the water and the vegetables." He showed everyone what he had found. It was a kind of black liquid. There was more of it in the water and less in the vegetables. At this moment, not only did his face turn ugly, the others' faces also turned ugly. Could it be that the water source was completely contaminated by the corpse poison? If that was the case, they could only drink water made by superpowered people in the future. The water made by superpowered people was always the purest, because they could separate the cleanest water molecules. They could even extract clean water from sewage. However, after the purified water became undrinkable, the superpowered people who relied only on water would be affected greatly. Fortunately, superpowered people didn't need to worry about being infected. It didn't matter what they drank. Immediately, someone was confused. "We used to drink the same water. Why didn't anything happen? But these 3 people came to our base, and now there's something wrong with our base." As soon as he said that, many people began to doubt Xiaoqing and the others. After all, he was right. They used to drink the purified water, and nothing happened. Why did it happen today? Xiaoqing glanced at them coldly, then said, "Idiots. I don't have any reason to attack your base, because even if all the ordinary people and superpowered people in your base work together, they can't cause any harm to me." When she said that, these people thought that she was being pretentious. Immediately, there were people below who laughed. They were probably laughing at her for overestimating herself. Even if she was pretentious, she should be more reliable. Xiaoqing wouldn't lower herself to the same level as these ignorant people. She just needed to use her strength to speak for herself. Then, Xiaoqing released the pressure of a high-level superpower possessor. A level 7 superpower possessor was like a legend to this group of people. Xiaoqing released her aura fiercely. Some of the weaker ones were not prepared and immediately knelt on the ground. Mu Lin giggled at the side. "Yo, grandson, now you know how to kneel before your grandmother." Their faces turned red from embarrassment, but none of them dared to say anything because their hearts were filled with shock. Although they couldn't sense what level Xiaoqing was exactly, she was definitely far above them. The big fat base chief's eyes were full of stars. He stammered, "Hi, hi, hi, hi. Master, you must be a level 6 Arcanist." Xiaoqing didn't nod or shake her head. She just said, "Chiyue, tell them what you found." Yang Chiyue nodded and said, "The amount of zombie poison in the vegetables is very weak. Unless you eat them for more than 10 years, you won't turn into a zombie. The zombie poison in the water is enough to turn people into zombies in a short time. This kind of zombie poison can't be completely purified using purifiers. I don't know if it's because of your base or because it's happening everywhere. I don't know what you're going to do." Xiaoqing looked at the base chief. He hesitated for a moment and said, "When the superpower possessors who went out come back, we'll leave this base. Right now, we're preparing to find a large base to settle down in. If that's the case, you can tell the passing bases to check their own water sources and food. Don't let the other bases repeat the tragedy of this base." Xiaoqing looked at the sky. It was almost dawn. The wilderness was actually the most dangerous at this time. Of course, that was for other people. For Xiaoqing and the others, there was no difference between day and night. "We'll leave first." Xiaoqing said goodbye on the spot. The fat base chief was reluctant to part with them. In the end, he sent Xiaoqing and the others away. The atmosphere between Xiaoqing and the others was very gloomy. Xiaoqing said calmly, "In the next few days, we have to speed up and try to reach Jingju as soon as possible. We have to tell the people in power in Jingju about this. If the environment continues to deteriorate, it will be too dangerous. Especially those ordinary people. Even if they live in the base, they can easily turn into zombies." Although it was said that after a year of the apocalypse, many ordinary people had died. However, the number of ordinary people was still much more than the superpower possessors. If all the ordinary people died, then the entire population of the Celestial Empire would instantly drop by 90%. What a frightening ratio. According to this situation, the future world would really only have superpower possessors because of natural selection. This was not what Xiao Qing wanted to see. Maybe it's not as bad as we think. Maybe the water source of this base has been contaminated. Yang Qiue comforted her softly. Xiao Qing responded, but the worry in her heart grew stronger. She always felt that things were not so simple. At least, it was not as simple as it seemed on the surface. After all, as those people said, they had used the purified water source before, but there was no problem in the base. Why would there be a problem today? There were only two possibilities. Either someone really poisoned the water source, or the water source was contaminated recently. If it was the latter, it could really prove that the environment was slowly deteriorating. Xiao Qing looked at the sky. Her face was expressionless, but there was a faint sadness in her heart. It was probably nature's revenge for the destruction of nature by mankind. Therefore, when the apocalypse came, everything that mankind had done to nature was multiplied by nature. No wonder there was such a saying. Karma, good and evil, retribution. It was not that there was no retribution, but that the time had not yet come. Mankind had finally tasted the bitter fruit that they had planted. Chapter 576. They arrived at the capital city as fast as they could. After arriving, Xiao Qing didn't go in directly. She was worried about causing panic. After all, many people in the capital city knew that she was an inhuman. It would be bad if she scared them. Mu Lin went into the city first and contacted Qin Zishi. Qin Zishi came to pick them up in person. When they arrived at the gate, Xiao Qing saw Master Qin standing at the gate. He stood on his tiptoes and looked around. When he found that there were only 4 of them, he was very disappointed. The baby didn't come. It was a dangerous journey, so I left him at home. I didn't dare to bring him here. Xiao Qing's heart was warm. Old Master Qin didn't act strangely because of her and Little Bun's status. He still liked Little Bun as usual. This was the greatest kindness he had shown them. Take him with you next time. I miss him very much. Master Qin felt wronged. We haven't seen each other for a long time. The baby must miss Grandpa. Okay, I'll take him with me next time. Xiao Qing smiled and said, I have something important to tell you this time. When they talked about business, Master Qin became serious. He asked Xiao Qing and the others to come in first and asked someone to put the vegetables there. Did something happen? After they sat down, Qin Zishi poured tea for everyone. Master Qin patted the sofa and asked Qin Zishi to sit down as well. Xiao Qing told Master Qin what they had encountered on their way here and what they might have guessed. If it's only one base, then it's contaminated. If all the bases have the same problem, then it's the environment. Master Qin's face changed. Old Master Qin's face changed, then he said, most of the bases drink water made by superpowered people, but a base is too big, so there are always some people who drink the purified water. But it's really not eye-catching for 1 or 2 people to become zombies, especially now, it's too chaotic. Many bases have heard that high-level zombies have sneaked in. The news you brought is very important, so it can't be spread out for the time being, otherwise it will cause panic. Xiao Qing, take your people and stay here for 2 days. I'll send people out to investigate and see if something similar has happened. Okay, old master. Xiao Qing took out a pack of shredded tobacco from her space and handed it to old Master Qin. Then she said, I planted it myself and it's already dried. The tobacco leaves are much stronger than cigarettes. Old Master Qin, have a taste. Old Master Qin immediately beamed with joy. Before the apocalypse, he had an opium pipe. The tobacco he smoked was of high quality. It was produced in the northeast and was especially strong. After the apocalypse, not to mention the northeast shredded tobacco, it was already good enough to have cigarettes to smoke. He patted Xiao Qing's shoulder and said, You're much more filial than my son. Qin Zishi rolled her eyes. If my father is a bastard, then what are you? Little brat, go away. Old Master Qin glared at Qin Zishi and sighed. Xiao Qing, you were born at the wrong time. If you were a little older and my son wasn't married, I would have match-made the two of you. If you were younger, you could have married my grandson. He sighed. I've always wanted a daughter. Why don't you be my daughter? Xiaoqing smiled and said, No, I can't. My situation is not suitable. She was actually very grateful. She could see that Master Qin really liked them and treated them as family. The more he treated them like this, the more she couldn't drag him down. Chapter 577. Her identity was too sensitive. Once it was discovered, the entire Qin family would be implicated. After all, humans believed that those who were not of their kind must have a different heart. She was indeed a zombie. She could live away from the crowd, but the Qin family couldn't. Once outsiders found out about her relationship with the Qin family, they would definitely use this to attack them. Old Master Qin said very seriously, Girl, what's wrong with your situation? Just because you're a zombie? Who wants to be a zombie? Just because you can't choose to be a zombie, you must be a bad person? You have your own thoughts, your own consciousness, and you can distinguish between good and evil. You're better than most ordinary people. What's wrong with you? If you don't like me, just say it. I'm about to die anyway. It's normal for people to dislike me. You know that's not what I meant, Xiaoqing said helplessly. She didn't want to bring trouble to the Qin family. Old Master Qin sighed and patted Xiaoqing's head. Silly girl, it's my privilege to have a daughter like you, do you know that? Actually, I should have a daughter too, but it was a mess at that time. My youngest daughter died with her mother before she was born. If she could be born, she would be about the same age as you. Xiaoqing smiled helplessly. You're playing the emotional card. I'll accept you as my godfather. Please don't dislike me in the future. I definitely won't dislike you. I even got a grandson for free. Old Master Qin couldn't stop smiling. Qin Zishi was dumbfounded. After a while, she said, I got an aunt out of nowhere. Good nephew, aunt will treat you to candy. Xiaoqing really took out a fruit candy and stuffed it into his mouth. Qin Zishi looked helpless. Old Master Qin made the ceremony very formal. After paying respects to heaven, earth, people, king, parents, and teachers, they offered incense and tea. Only then did they really become godfathers. Old Master Qin was smiling happily the entire time. He held Xiaoqing's hand and was full of joy. He couldn't wait to tell everyone he met that this was his daughter. Let's catch up with my bastard son and daughter-in-law tonight. Let's have a good meal as a family. Old Master Qin patted Xiaoqing's hand and said happily. Xiaoqing took this opportunity to calmly introduce the people around her to Old Master Qin. At that time, Old Master Qin was dumbfounded. He had just gained a goddaughter and 2 godsons-in-law. Moreover, according to his goddaughter, there was another godson-in-law who hadn't come yet. After a long while, the old man finally said, My daughter is capable. To be able to make so many men willingly follow her, wasn't that also a kind of ability? Moreover, these men were all very outstanding. None of them were bad. She didn't suffer a loss at all. The old man got over it in a matter of minutes. What era was this? It was the end of the world. It was already so chaotic. Why would he still consider how many men she had? What did it have to do with him that she was leading a good life and that there was no fire in her backyard? Most importantly, this was his daughter. His daughter was outstanding and capable. It was natural for her to find a few men. It was fine as long as his daughter was happy. Old Master Qin had just gotten a daughter. Now that he looked at Xiaoqing, no matter how he looked at her, everything she did was right and everything she did was good. Xiaoqing couldn't help but sweat. It was a miracle that Qin Zishi wasn't spoiled rotten. Old Master Qin was spoiling her to the heavens. After the official business and private matters were settled, Xiaoqing prepared to fulfill her promise and take Mu Lin out for a walk. Old Master Qin was very reluctant. After all, this was his daughter who he had just acknowledged. It was the most passionate time for their relationship. However, He couldn't stop his daughter from taking her friends out to play. Hence, Old Master Qin instructed Qin Zishi seriously, "Take your aunt out to play. Don't let anyone bully your aunt. If anything happens, don't hesitate. Just beat them up. I'll hold the sky up even if it collapses." Qin Zishi, QAQ biased. He had been beaten up since he was young. Now that he was with Shaoqing, he was spoiled to the heavens. How biased was she? In other families, daughters were treasures and sons were weeds. In this family, daughters were treasures and sons and grandsons were weeds. However, Qin Zishi didn't feel that it was unfair at all. He liked Shaoqing very much too. He was very happy that he could become a legitimate family with Shaoqing. If Shaoqing became his sister instead of his aunt, it would be even better. Did anything big happen in the capital these days? Shaoqing asked casually as they walked out. Qin Zishi thought for a moment and said, "Nothing big happened. It's still the same as before. If you want to talk about big things, it's probably that 2 big factories have just been built. One is dedicated to producing some daily necessities, and the other is a military factory. However, the capital's territory isn't good. In terms of food production, it's a lot worse. It's even a bit of a problem for self-sufficiency. A while ago, they opened a planting base not far from the capital. It's still an experimental field now. If it succeeds, the capital can truly become self-sufficient. Since the end of the world, human beings have been slowly getting on the right track. When the environment doesn't adapt to us, we can only adapt to the environment. Human beings have a strong ability to adapt to the environment. As long as there are no more changes, things will stabilize soon." Shaoqing said so, but the worry in her heart didn't lessen at all. Because the changes had already happened, and they couldn't find the source. If it was man-made, it would be fine. If it was man-made, it would be easier to solve. However, if the environment was really changing, then human beings would have to adapt to it again. Now that the water source was infected, would the air be infected, the land would be infected, and even the light would be harmful to human beings? If it went on like this, sooner or later, human beings would be extinct. The only people left on this planet would probably be zombies and a small number of people with superpowers. In the end, there would be no food, no water source to survive, and no companions. The superpowered people who could survive would choose to end their own lives. Thinking about it this way, zombies would be the ones who evolved according to the environment, and superpowered people would be the ones who would be eliminated. Taking a deep breath, Shaoqing threw these horrible thoughts to the back of her mind. She said seriously, "When I was in the capital, I had already eaten all over the capital. I remember clearly which restaurant made the best food and which snacks were the most special. Today, I'll take you to eat all over the capital." After a while, she didn't know if there would be such peace like today. Shaoqing rolled up her sleeves and suddenly made a move without saying a word. She directly kicked him to the corner and gave him a good beating. Mu Lin and the others immediately followed, especially Yang Qiue. He was the most vengeful person. When he beat someone, he would deliberately step on some key parts. And he was very ruthless. It was not his own balls, so he stepped on them casually. Shaoqing felt pain for him. The man was beaten until he screamed. At first, he choked and said, "Qin Zishi, you've got guts. How dare you beat me? Aren't you afraid that my grandpa will find trouble with you? I'll go back and tell my grandpa." Later, he began to beg for mercy. "Brother, sister, don't hit me. Ouch. You stepped on my balls. It's going to break. You can't hit me. You can't hit my face either. Give me a way out." You're tuning in to the Dreamy Chapters YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.